pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our meeting tonight is a regularly monthly work session combined with our third meeting to review the preliminary budget for 1996-1997 fiscal year. During this meeting, we will not be voting or making the final decision on any topic. Questions and comments by members of the audience will be limited to those topics on the agenda for this meeting. Tonight, we will also present proclamations to outstanding students. This meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone and state their name and address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 3 minutes. This limit will permit time for all of those who wish to speak to the board. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, the board president may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. Before beginning tonight's agenda, as for the work session, I'll turn it over to Mr. Ken Weir for our proclamations to outstanding students.
As we announced at our last meeting, we are scheduled to present proclamations to students this evening, and we've invited the girls and boys, both swim teams from North Penn High School. And I'd like to first introduce the boys' coach, Bill Bartle.
Thank you.
Coach Bartle. Coach Bartle will be assisted by the girls' coach. We'll introduce her in a moment, and they will introduce the students. Before the coaches introduce the students, now that they have arrived, I'd like to read the proclamation, which is a generic proclamation in the first part, and then tailored for each student in the final part. Whereas many North Penn School District students individually and collectively perform distinguished service to their school in many activities, and whereas the reputation and image of the North Penn School District is built and enhanced by the performance of its faculty and students, and whereas the accomplishments of individual students in academic, artistic, athletic, leadership, literary, and musical endeavors bring positive community interest in school programs, and whereas the future of any community rests in the hands of its responsible youth, and then the student is named, and the accomplishment of the individual and the group is described. And then finally, now therefore be it resolved that the North Penn Board of School Directors go on record this 7th day of May, 1996, honoring the spirit and the accomplishment of this exemplary performance. So Coach Bartle, will you begin for us, please?
Okay. First of all, these boys placed first at District 1 swimming championships, and they were state runners-up this year at Penn State. First boy is Jeremy Bergman. Jeremy was a state qualifier this year as a freshman. Next, Steve Bonner. Steve was an all-state diver this year, placing third. Next, Jason Craig. Jason set a District 1 record this year in the 100-yard backstroke and was all-state in 3 events. Next, Chris Durchek. Chris placed top 12 at the district meet this year. Next, Jeff Fakish. Jeff was all-state in 3 events as well this year. Jamie Knight. Jamie was all-state in 2 events this year. Next, Kevin Rader. Kevin was top 12 at the district meet this year. Next, Ago Zabo. Ago was also a state qualifier this year. Next, Silvo Zabo. Silvo was all state this year. Next, and last, next, Eric Umlauf. Eric was All-State in 3 events this year. And last, Phil Valente, and Phil was top 12 district meet this year.
Thank you very much, Coach Sparta. I'd like you to welcome our girls coach, Denise Junis, and she will introduce the young ladies who are here tonight.
Okay, our girls team placed 3rd at the district meet this year, and our first girl is Andrea Dobbs, who placed top 12 in 200 IM. We have Angela Dobbs, who had 2 9th places in 200 IM and 100 butterfly. Tammy Hendricks, who had 5th place in diving at districts and 6th place in diving at states. Heather Hollenbach, who had 7th place in 100 freestyle and was all-state on 3 relays. Karen Hammer, who placed 10th in the 100 butterfly. Kristen Krail, who placed 3rd in breaststroke at districts, was all-state in 3 relays and placed 9th in 100 breaststroke at states. And we have Susan Schreiber, who placed 10th in the 500 freestyle and was all-state in 3 relays.
Let's give them a round of applause. I'd like to ask that Bill and Denise would come up front. We have some awards for them. Award of Merit for Outstanding Service to the North Penn School District. Denise has rendered meritorious service to the students and staff of the North Penn School District and has thereby improved the quality of life in this community. Thank you. Okay. Okay. I'll have one thing and then I'll turn it over to you. I just want to explain to them how we're going to attempt to do audience of citizens. We're going to have award one audience of citizens. Here, well, yeah, here and here, right here. That's what we'll do. Okay, on tonight's agenda, you will see that we will cover curriculum and instruction. And on that, after that part of the meeting, we will open it up to an audience of citizens. After the audience of citizens, we will then move into the budget review, and at the conclusion of budget review, we will have a second audience of citizens. I would ask that you would limit your comments to each different topic in regards to when we talk curriculum instruction. Again, I'd ask that your comments would be directed only to those issues, and then when we move into the budget, that you would limit your comments to items that are related to the budget. I'll now turn tonight's meeting over to Dr. Bose.
The presentations that are being made this evening related to summer school and class under 20 rules are not new to the school district, and as the staff has helped me come to understand, this is a traditional, at this time of year, presentation to secure the board's approval, and first and foremost, to advise the board of these two matters related to temporary employment for administrative staff in the summer to conduct summer school, as well as as we're scheduling for next school year in the secondary schools, whether or not classes under 20 would be permitted, and if so, which ones are waived from the practice of not offering a class with fewer than 20 students. And to bring those presentations to you are members of the staff who are knowledgeable about these programs and had responsibilities for managing them in the past. Dr. Juan Vaughn will talk about both topics, and other members of the staff will contribute as needed. So in this case, Dr. Vaughn, we're ready to hear about the proposals that would operate summer school as we have in the past for many years.
I don't know that I need to add anything to that, Dr. Bose, except to ask if the board has any questions about the assistant principal's work in the summer or the appointment of the summer school principal.
Let's open that part up for questions. Really, we're talking about summer work assistant principals, number 2, 1996 summer school principal, and number 3, summer work supervisors of special education. How about we open it up for questions? I'll open it up. Mrs. Mangle.
Sure. Dr. Bond, this is at Pembroke again, the summer school?
Yes.
We're still holding it there?
Yes.
Is this Mrs. Dickerson's first?
No, second.
This is their second year, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to note probably one of the greatest concerns I have about the summer school program is control and behavioral control, and that was one of the comforts I had with, or felt with Dr. Belanda, that he could control the behavior of students, and I'm really impressed that Mrs. Dickerson's going to take this on again, because as a female, I think she's one of the strongest female principals we have and can control students of all types, particularly those that are rowdy. And I feel very comfortable with Mrs. Dickerson running the summer school program, and I thought Belanda would be a tough act to follow, but it wasn't as tough as I thought.
Well, she had a good mentor, Dr. Belanda.
She did. She did. No other questions. Just wanted to check and see if it was still Pembroke.
Okay, how about some more questions? We'll stay over on this side. None?
No.
Bill? Pat? John?
No question.
David?
None.
Vicky?
Standard program.
Only the expected attendance.
Pardon me?
Expected attendance?
I don't know. I don't know. Well, I don't know how many attend, but we adjust the number of teachers we need by the number of people who attend.
Okay, but you feel that the assistants are necessary regardless at any rate?
No, assistants aren't in summer school. The assistants are in the regular buildings. I'm not sure.
Okay.
There are two different
This is
topics.
strictly with the summer work and then with your summer
Right,
school?
Right.
And let me emphasize, I didn't point that out, Mrs. Shear, that we're talking about the work that occurs during the summer by the assistant principals in preparation for next school year, the summer school, and then Mrs. Clark's need for assistance in the summer, primarily related to the influx of new students with handicaps and the need to provide a verification of the handicaps, prior IEPs, and current IEPs to start the new school year.
I believe there was.
I apologize for missing
That's
that.
okay. Well, I believe there was a discussion on this topic briefly last year regarding whether it's actually better to take 10-month employees who were constantly filling them as 11th or 12-month employees, if perhaps it wouldn't have
It's a good discussion.
been worthwhile to review and see if perhaps they should actually become officially 230-day employees or what have you, which category best fits the needs that are generally called upon every single year. We are filling these positions with a different calendar at a different level, but doing it through a daily supplemental rate. And in doing so, then this wouldn't have to be a yearly ritual.
I think if you're suggesting it bears investigation and analysis, I would agree.
Okay, great. Then perhaps you could consider that also, and even as we go through to approve this, if basically we're approving at a salary rate that flows with the per diem anyway, you may want to look into Dr. Bozeman, you might want to initiate discussion on that and perhaps even have it applied for our next school calendar year
I will do that.
as a administrative review.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, thank you for that short presentation, Dr. Bond, but I know you have more tonight. I'll ask that we'll move on now to item number 2, classes under 20.
And I'm sure that you folks will allow this to be a short one.
Silence.
Each year, at least this year since I've been at the high school, we've brought forth courses to be dropped, courses that are under class size guidelines, and 20 in this case, and courses we've combined. I need to make a couple introductory statements that might answer some of your questions before they're asked. What the practice is to take a look at staffing needs, take a look at the courses that are offered, take a look at the numbers of students who are requesting the courses. Many of the courses that we're asking for exceptions, you'll need to understand that some are related to the number of computers we have in the rooms, and others will make no difference in terms of staffing if we run it or if we do not run it. There are no combinations of courses here that we can drop that it would equate to a person. So, that having been said, I call your attention to pages 2 and 3 and entertain questions that you might have.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Sheriff.
Dr. Bourne, I want to applaud the programming alterations that you've made I guess over the past couple of years. I see far less courses that are under 15 on this list as compared to, I guess, a few years back when it would be common to see quite a few that were 7 or 8 that were dealing with them much closer to the borderline of the 20 and under. I do want to ask, when I read these gifted courses that are here,
Yes.
and I see class size guidelines of 18 to 20, and they're being up for discussion with a projected class size of 18, it's my understanding that right now the legal requirement still stands at a maximum class size of 15
Vicki, you're
for
correct.
gifted programs.
You are correct. In order to service those programs at the high school, we have an additional gifted support person that offsets the number. But we are capped at 15 by the state.
Right, well, that's why I wonder, do we really have on our books classroom guidelines that say we'll have 18 to 20?
Only if we have additional support, we do.
So that's when did that take place last year, or that we just altered that?
We started that at the middle level, and we've had to increase it at the high school due to the numbers.
And that satisfies the state requirements.
The state has accepted that as a model.
So we have 2 employees involved in those courses.
Right. And that's but there are also, Sadie, you may want to jump in here because there are several classes running, and that person helps to service the numbers that are in the other classes.
Oh, so
too.
you're saying, though, it's more efficient to do it that way? Because I'm saying if you've got 2 people serving a class of 18, then where's the benefit over one person each serving 8? Do you
Right.
know what I mean? Or 9?
Well, you also have the teachers of the gifted who are at the high school who are also teaching regular ed sections at the same time. So this helps keep the balance of all the courses, and it provides the additional support for the children that are in those classes with the additional person working on the IEP projects and special needs of the
I
child.
think I understand what you're talking about with the flexibility. You're
Same-
talking
right.
Betty Jean
Same-
Stratton?
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Same thing was experienced at Penfield.
Okay, then I understand. Those numbers were like 18 to
You were
20 for
correct.
gifted
Right.
program?
You were correct.
Okay, I have no other specific questions at this moment, other than to want to clarify that for my own understanding. And I'll say that I've seen considerable refinement. I guess the other thing, one other would be on the Algebra 2, Penfield, because of the grade level. Just a little concern that we're only dealing with a projected class size of 10 for such a major subject. I think that's Seems unusual to me at a middle school going 7th and 9th.
I can't explain it. All I know is that's the number of students that have opted for it. I can't explain the number.
Has there been any review to see how that suits up with Penndale and
Oh, I have all of those figures. They're
Pembroke?
not here
because they're not under 20?
No.
Well, I'd like to take, I think somebody ought to take a look to see why, when we're dealing, and also with Pembroke, particularly since they're gonna have about the same population, why would you have one that's above 20 and you have 50% less students
Where?
opting in for Algebra 2 at Penfield?
Well, I don't know.
I'm not asking you to have the answer, but I think it might be worth just taking a look to see if there's something.
We'll have Mr. Decker take a look at that.
Something within the math outline that,
Dave, can you answer that question?
He needs a microphone. Yes. He needs a microphone.
Would you
There's
one.
go to the podium and answer it, please? Thank you.
you understood it.
The Algebra 2 program offered in 9th grade is a 2-year acceleration program. Students qualify for that program beginning in grade 7. This year, there are approximately 50 students in the school district in 7th grade taking that program. These students that are currently going into 9th grade are currently enrolled in geometry in 8th grade. This is the next course in that sequence, and it just happens as we split the students into 3 schools. There happen to be 10 of them at Penfield for the upcoming year, and more than 20 at both Pembroke and Penndale for the upcoming year. So we are offering this course, or intending to offer this course as part of our sequence at each one of the schools. But this is the 3rd math course in that sequence for these students. And it just so happens that
So you just
there are
think
only
it's an
10 of them.
oddity?
It's a bit of an anomaly, but it is a small population in the 2-year accelerated program that take that aggressive of a course in 7th grade, that Algebra 1 course. And this is their course 2 years later.
I just like to see when we follow,
I think
we
the
see
bigger
some
question.
strange
I think the
numbers.
bigger question is how many at Penfield and Pembroke will be in that first year of that course this year, because they will be the ones that will be projecting to the 2nd year, and we can get that number for you.
It was just to see that if there was something
If there's-
strange occurring to where you're finding students off balance and shying away from the Algebra 2 course. And
We'll take a look at how many are taking it
There was something in the earlier years that did that, so I just couldn't help but notice the difference. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll stay over on this side. Any more questions over here? David, John?
I think all my questions have been answered. We have, courses have been combined, courses have already been recommended to be dropped. Everything else seems to be in order according to the guidelines. I have no other questions.
John?
Same here. Feel the same way.
We'll start over here with Pat.
Dr. Bond, you mentioned on your green sheet, it's important to realize that we're in the early stages of schedule development and determination of the number of sections in each department is just now being finalized.
Yes.
This is not the final list then, is that correct?
This may not be the final list of ones to, there will be no additional courses on here that are less than this.
No, but the student numbers could change.
Student numbers could go up. One of the reasons we ask for some of these exceptions now is so that we have room to put students in. When we get transfers in, when we get moves, we had 100 students between this point and the time school started last year. We had 100 students come to the high school that we needed to schedule. So we need to allow some space for that. That's what that meant. That's a good question.
Okay. And also the asterisk you have next to certain subjects. At the bottom, you explain limited workstations and space safety issues. I'm hoping what you're saying then is, for example, in ceramics, 17 students is the maximum we can put in that class?
If we had, and keep it safe, yes.
Okay.
That has to do with
drawing,
class size.
Okay, computer arts, the same thing, we have to worry about a safety feature there?
Yeah, we have to worry about the size of the room.
Okay.
A lot of these rooms are not regular classrooms, so we have to limit the size. Now, we're hoping if we can pick up a couple computers, some of these computer areas
Right.
will get up to 20.
Okay.
But right now, we're sitting there with 18, 19 computers. Therein lies the exception for that reason. That's what limited workstations mean.
Well, that's what I was asking. Did we just have enough for 15 students or 17? Is that why you projecting these numbers on the right-hand side?
That is correct.
Because I just see micro computer application, I'm assuming. You're saying limited workstations.
It means we do not have.
But I see 17.2 students.
Yeah.
Where's the .2?
Well,
It's got a laptop.
Who's the .2?
We'll make sure it's not your kid. We divide and subtract.
I understand. I understand. I just wanted to, I assumed that's what it was. I just wanted to verify that's why you were recommending those numbers, because that was, I just saw that the computer art, when you mentioned safety, I thought, geez, you know, they throwing pals at each other? Or
Socks.
Okay, all right. That's all. Thank you.
Bill?
No question.
Sharice?
Yes, Dr. Bond, under the courses to be dropped for next year at the high school, on page 3, I noticed that debate 2 and public speaking 2 have combined request number 28. Aren't those two courses similar or related in some fashion?
They're different levels.
Pardon?
They're at different levels. One's a 5.0 course, one's a 4.0 course.
One's college professional.
Okay,
Okay?
all right. And what is PASS?
PASS was a program that we had for students who are at risk academically and who had experienced difficulty in 9th grade, some of those in 10th grade. So we had 10th and 11th graders in a program first period of the day with a teacher who was supervising and trying to get them on track.
Well, we have 49 requests for that course for next year.
We had, yes, but there became a question of priorities in terms of staffing.
So what happens to those at-risk children then?
They get into the regular classroom.
And then who monitors their level of adaptness and things that go along with that?
Guidance counselors and teachers and assistant principals. If we do pass, it's going to be an additional part-time teacher. Yeah, let me say something else here, because I need to understand that PASS, I believe in PASS. I think it's a good program. But my charge to myself was to deal with economics and deal with kids and deal with programming all at the same time. And PASS got on the list. But it will take an additional part-time teacher to do that.
Because of the number of students that...
Because of the number of students and because of the number of teachers that I have on board. I don't have the staff to do that without hiring somebody.
Maybe that's something that the board needs to discuss a little bit further, because I have a concern with that number of students. If they have requested the extra help. Also...
Now, Mrs. Krieger,
yes.
That's teacher recommendations, administrative recommendations, not necessarily student requests.
This is teacher recommendation. Okay. Under the ESL English 1 and 2 at the high school,
Yes,
we have 3 students.
yes.
For that, what is the current staff?
We have one.
ESL program now?
We have one ESL teacher, and we have one ESL teacher who is at the high school and also supervises ESL throughout the district, who is on a teaching schedule at our place as well as a supervising schedule for the entire district. ESL over the years has increased significantly. There were times when we said we were going to run 1 class or 2 classes, and in August we have 20, 25 students registered.
That was going to be my next question.
We feel strongly that we have to leave space for these youngsters to come in, and they will. They always do. We have a record on that.
Right. Okay, that's all.
Good, Don.
Okay, Dr. Bond, back to the PASS group again. You said the 49 are teacher recommended. Of the 49, what is the likelihood of the anticipation of how many of those 49 recommended would actually take that course?
40, 42.
40, 42, and that's, you said 1, 2 periods? How many periods is that?
That'd be 2 periods.
2 periods, and that would require a part-time?
Require a person 2 periods a day.
And that's such a big economic deal for those kids. I guess I'd be concerned if you were to take the demographics of these kids, a profile on these kids. I have a funny feeling that these kids are tough. socioeconomically, et cetera, et cetera. And I
That is
think there's an
correct.
unfairness here.
That's correct.
I don't think I like that.
That's fine with me.
Not when you're willing to put a teacher to do related fine arts at Penfield with 9. I just don't like that. I see related fine arts for 11 at Pembroke, related fine arts for 9 at Penfield, and we can't get 2 periods for 40 kids that are probably from questionable circumstances. The other thing too, I guess the practice of bringing these to us when they're under 20. I don't understand why 20 isn't self-eliminating. And at what point do the teachers pick up more slack or more responsibility in recruiting and trying to get these courses up to 20? I guess having been here forever, I've seen coaches do a better job recruiting kids out of hallways for sports teams and maybe filling some of these courses.
But if they recruit them, they do, and they recruit them for one place, they take them from someplace else. I mean, there's a lot of that.
Yeah, but can we clean out some of the study halls and maybe get some of the kids that could handle some of these courses to fill them in? I just thought 20 would be self-eliminating, and every year this comes forward. And we sit here like Grinches, looking over this list, when how many more does it really take to fill these classes and,
I don't know where you're
or
going to
more
get
recruitment efforts put forward?
I don't know where you get them. You have 150 people taking applied math.
I don't mean, that's not a good example.
Well, you have 38 people taking Spanish 5. I mean, you have 17 people taking accounting. I don't know where they're going to come from. Because to come from here, they go for someplace else, so that course ends up on the list.
Okay, German 2 has 13. This related fine arts stuff has 11 and 9. The one section, so the ones that have only one section, courses with only.
You will notice that I think there's 5 of those at the high school. In the middle schools, those are required courses. I mean, they have to take an elective. And
But the kids are telling us something. On one hand, we're complaining about how large our schools are, that they're overcrowded, they're this and that, and we get 9 kids in related fine arts. The kids are telling us, we don't want this. Because the kids have the autonomy, I guess along with their parents to some extent, to pick their own course. They're telling us it's not popular. They're thumbing their nose at this course. I guess the other question I have, or comments, I guess, Japanese. I think we have been doing our best with Japanese for a number of years now, and I just don't see it building. You're making accommodations by combining 2 and 3, but I think that Japanese never took off here. Now, is that one teacher?
that's a teacher's here for 2 periods.
Well, I would suggest we drop Japanese for the total of, certainly less than the number of kids in PASS.
Well, there's 25 or so kids in Japanese 1.
Okay.
There still may be less.
Okay. 25 or less kids in Japanese 1 and 15 here. I dropped Japanese because we have not been able to build that up. We play with it now 3-4 years. And I would bring back teacher for 2 periods to PASS. That's my economic recommendation.
Can I just piggyback on something that Don said? Dr. Bond, how many children this year were in PASS?
About 33.
So that was 1 period?
2 periods.
2 periods. And at 40 to 42 would require 2 periods.
Yes.
So where's the extra help you need for that?
That person's going back to teach what they're certified to teach.
Okay. How did that come about?
Pardon me?
How did that come about?
That we had room in the schedule last year to do that. We had room in that person's schedule last year to do that. But we need that person back in the area that they're certified to teach this year.
And that is because?
Because we have more students taking the course that he's certified to teach.
All right. Am I to assume then that a teacher who is teaching reading improvement or reading enrichment is not qualified or certified to teach PASS?
No, you're not to assume that. You're
Could those teachers
If you folks are telling me that you want pass, I'll find a way to do pass.
But
But
Dr. Bond, you told us that the only way you could accommodate PASS for
Right.
next year is you had to hire another
that's
teacher.
right.
And I think that Mrs. Mangle is referencing the same thing, is if we had PASS this year and you're dropping all these other courses because of a lack of student requests, it seems to me that the teachers are still there and that they are still having the same availability to teach.
You may reassign. You may reassign those teachers, is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm
In
saying.
other words, the courses that you dropped here, those teachers have been reassigned.
No, I understand
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but
It's
there's
not that we
got
have
to be
these
a way
extra
to
teachers.
still accommodate PASS with the number of teachers that we have currently at the high school.
What she's saying is if there's a flexibility
There has to be
within
some
the whole
flexibility on
staff
the
to
part
have
of
two
the
people
staff.
have someone for the two
And
periods.
Ms. Mingo, I don't mean any disrespect to you, but Japanese, for the students who are in Japanese 1, they may be 30 now, Japanese is a tough course, okay? But Japanese is a recognized language, international language today, more so than it was 10 years ago. We have a lot of students that I think are in Japanese 2 and Japanese 3. We have some students who are in those courses this year who are going on to be exchange students for the summer period. They have really benefited from it. And I really think before we say, okay, drop this or drop that, I would like Dr. Bond to see if he could enlist some flexibility on the part of our teaching staff out at the high school.
I'll do it, and
I mean,
I'll do it.
we're not voting on this tonight, we're voting on this at the end
I'll
of the
do it.
month.
I'll find something else, I'll find something else to change.
Dr. Bond, how many teachers are now at 6-period assignments up at the high school? I know that was increasing.
About a third, about a third.
And then we could just-
So we have
I thought we had
2/3
more
of the
than that.
staff.
So we have 2/3 with only 5 periods,
Yes.
right?
There you
But
go.
There's
see,
the
it's not, but it's
flexibility.
not that simple. I mean, you can't do just like that, because those folks will have other assignments. This notion that all the teachers can teach 6 assignments is an erroneous one, because they have other assignments. Every one of our math teachers are assigned a 6th assignment that's math support. For students who have math concerns and need help, they're there for them. All of our special ed teachers have a period, their 6th assignment is supporting and tutoring and extra help with kids.
Well, and Dr. Bond, our point is that if that's the case, then there has to be 2 teachers out at that high school that can be available for academic support for the 49 children
And
who
I
have
said,
been requested for that.
and I said I'll find them, and I'll find them someplace else.
Hold on, let's find out. Do you have any more comments, Donna?
No, I just think
Okay, is
Dr.
there-
Bond gets a
yeah,
bigger
let-
hammer and gets this
Well,
taken
let's
care
come
of.
back. I've heard you very clearly, and Sharice, but Paul the board a little bit. Bill, what's your thoughts?
The question of Japanese, I think that we have made a commitment to the kids in Japanese 2 and 3, and they have chosen a course that they can't undo right now. So I don't think the proper thing for them is to cancel Japanese this year, but if the board decides to drop Japanese, just say we won't offer Japanese 1 next year.
I think that's what you said.
And let it phase out. But you can't, these kids have made a commitment to possibly to a 4-year language program, and now we're gonna tell them we're pulling the rug out. Now they're stuck with something that they can't complete. I don't think that's right to do.
Okay. How about direction for Dr. Bond, though, as far as the past class?
I think, and I appreciate that, I think that my direction is to find a way to run pass and not hire somebody for 2 periods a day. I think that's what I
Yeah,
heard.
well, I want to hear some more support for that. Is there support over on this side?
Certainly interested in finding out if there's a way to do that.
Okay, well then, will you be able to come back when?
I'll come back the next time you meet.
Okay. Okay. Okay, let's come back over to this side for some more questions. Vicki, you have another question?
Yeah, as a result of this discussion, I have to agree that we have put a lot of effort into building the Japanese program. However, I think Dr. Bond's made a move here to work to see whether or not it can survive on its own through combining it. At least there has been there is an effort to have it run more efficiently. I do want to ask, though, with German 1 being combined with German 2, that while I very much fought for us to combine the small classes at the higher level, German 4 with 5, where there was a lot of resistance with that, when students had actually acquired some strength in the language, but I'm a little concerned about German 1 being combined with German 2, because that's a pretty tough language, and you're dealing with two very different levels. I'm wondering how.
Let me listen, folks.
Has this been common?
There's no way in the world I was coming up here asking for an exception for 8 kids without combining them. And I would love nothing better for you than tell me to have a section of 8 and 13 in German 1 and 2. That's not what I felt that my charge was for this meeting.
No, I appreciate that, but I'm just going to ask then, was German 4 a higher level of enrollment? Is that why you chose to take the two beginning courses and put them
because they're where the low numbers are. That's where the low numbers are.
Well, I hope that's a sign that we've done a lot better with building the German courses at the lower grade levels.
That is.
Okay, because traditionally you'd find it the other way around in our totals, that as you went higher, they would actually be lower class sizes. I just needed to ask it.
Sure.
So you could explain the rationale why you would put 1 and 2 rather than perhaps 2 with 3 together. And I'd also say that related fine arts, it's something that I have to revisit from last year. Mrs. Mangum and myself, we both had concerns.
Where's related fine arts?
The related fine arts. So Donna was referencing with 9.
Apparently at Penndale you have enough.
When this program of studies that we now have was put in place, one of our areas of concern was that the electives were really all art-related under the same periods. You had your choice, and your electives were band, chorus, or related fine arts. And I always felt there should have been an alternative for that period of the day, for that elective, for the more academically inclined, whether it was computer keyboarding, which we could use more of it at the middle school level, or something that gives you a choice. I mean, for some children to say, take your pick, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another, because they're just not inclined towards the
reason related fine art is on here for an exception is because it's running at the other middle schools. That's why it's on here for an exception, because it's running at the other schools. And that's when you have 3 schools, or 2 schools, that's one of the things that happens.
But it's also on the list for Pembroke.
Well,
and
it's on for Brook and for Field.
And so it's only Penndale that's really sustained it.
Because they have more students.
Right.
So if you eliminated both those courses, the kids would have to pick band or chorus, right?
No, well, that's why I would have liked to have seen another elective, one that is away from, that gives a little bit of diversity, and that's course scheduling for that. We had that discussion when this program of studies was approved by those who did support it, and I think, Dr. Bose, perhaps as we move forward into this next school year, perhaps you should consider evaluating that concern of ours, that there is something like another alternative. I know my son had to take a pick of those, and there wasn't anything there that he really was excited or interested in going into in that elective schedule.
May I make my annual request? My annual request is that sometime prior to crunch time, folks who have a problem with the program of studies look at it and make suggestions or recommendations then. These topics, I say this every year, they don't come up until either program of studies is up here to be voted on or until we're at budget time. And it's too late for that stuff.
Well, Dr.
This argument was made
Braun,
last year, but we were in a minority and nobody listened.
I asked for this.
I've been saying that for 9 years.
I've always said that this is ridiculous that we wait for students to choose, plus we're looking at numbers that are fuzzy because you don't know what they're going to be.
Right,
and they're soft numbers. I would have rather seen, if you'd like, Dr. Braun, well, you won't be here to benefit from this, but I really believe we should put ourselves on a new schedule with this process. And I had always felt that this should be discussed in the fall prior to the program of studies being made up. And no, we will not have students committed or attached to the program as they are now, but rather we look at it on a historical basis. Any that did not hold up to or more students that were under 20 for 2 out of the past 3 years comes to us, and we make our decisions proactive to the students and actual people and bodies being attached to these courses.
For the singleton,
It'd make it a lot easier
for the
to do it
singleton
that way.
courses who don't make it 2 years in a row, we automatically drop them. For the singleton courses who don't meet the 20 limit, we drop them automatically. And some of these drops are represented.
But I'd
So
still
this
like to
needs-
see
this
this done
needs-
in the fall.
This
so that
needs to
we're not-
become a discussion for the fall, okay?
Prior to the
And
program
what
of studies
And what we
meeting.
need to do is this fall, we need to talk about it, and let's key in on the arts, and let's talk about the middle schools where it is art, it's either chorus or band or the related fine arts. Find out if there are other courses are available, what could be offered, we'll look at it, and then we'll see when fine arts may not even make it to the list.
Dr. Vaughn?
But we can't
all
do,
share
I don't
the
think
same
we,
frustration
I don't see
because
how
we're in a
we can ask him to do
catch-22.
it at this point. I don't think we can drop it. So
I wasn't
it's-
asking for him
yeah,
to drop
well,
anything.
Dr. Bose is noting it right now.
I didn't ask for him to drop anything, and I'm glad he brought it up because
No,
it was
you're right,
one
you
that
didn't
as I
ask to
saw
drop,
this.
but you asked if there anything else was available that they could take.
Well, I'm just saying for the next school year that should be reviewed for.
Vicki, I think Dr. Vaughn is
That's
saying the
great.
same thing you're saying.
Right, absolutely.
Let's review the course studies
Yeah.
before, so colleges do. They review history, and when you go to fill out your roster in college, I know I used to sit there and think, boy, this is what I'm gonna take. I was gonna get a class every day at 2 o'clock until I went down and all of a sudden you saw on the board the classes that were closed or filled, and you had to go back and redo your roster.
Yeah, for
But
years
that
I
was
thought
always
this was
done,
ridiculous.
that was always done way in advance.
I always
We knew
felt
in
it
the
was-
spring what the roster was gonna be for the fall, so I think Dr. Vaughn's saying the same thing. Let's, rather than have crunch time and make these suggestions, let's look at it perhaps in September, October of this year for next year.
Well, that's something I felt should have been done
I
a
agree
long
with you, and
time
I
ago.
agree with Dr. Vaughn. He
We
makes a
couldn't
good
get them
point as
changed.
well.
We were always on the same schedule, and we're doing it in the spring. The students have already
Absolutely.
chosen. And I
Okay,
intended to raise that
we will
again.
address that. Dr. Bond has noted, Dr. Bose has noted it, and we'll make sure that's part of this discussion this fall. Good point.
I have a question for you.
And I think you've done a great job too, Deb.
I have a question, and this is always a dilemma for us, because the real questions on this list become the singleton courses. And when you take a look and you see that we have 54, well, let's take a look at a course, like 36 in the Chemistry 2 honors. And that's always a dilemma for us, whether you run one course of 36 of 2 of 18. And our chemistry labs won't support 36 students.
How many will they support, Doctor?
24, 26. And so you have to cut that off. Another question comes up about, we have tried to offer chemistry AP for a number of years. And we've offered chemistry AP and chemistry honors, and the students continue to tell us by their choices that they'd rather have chemistry honors than chemistry AP. And that's why, and for years, chemistry AP may be the exception to the rule. About after 2 years we drop it, because we're always hoping that we'll get enough students to run it, but we haven't for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Aren't they similar courses, though?
Well, they're similar courses, but they're at a higher level.
Yeah, right.
Right. And the students opt for the honors course rather than the AP.
I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, we're really not talking about a whole lot of difference in terms of material and so forth.
Well, the
It just
teachers
may
would-
be a little more.
This is a little more rigorous, and it goes
experimentation or
by, and
whatever.
this is the one that you get credit for if
Right.
you
Right.
pass it to go to college.
I find that interesting, though, that the kids don't want the AP course, but they take chemistry, they want the chemistry too.
Well, a lot of them are opting for other AP courses, and
Right,
many of them
right.
say they only take 2 AP courses at a
Right.
time.
Right.
Okay, let's wrap this part up. Any other questions? I just have one question, Dr. Bond. The mechanical drawing areas under the high school, yeah, is any of that actual mechanical drawing, or is that all CAD work?
No, it's both.
It is both.
It's both.
Where does it, somewhere to make it clear, could somewhere under the advanced, I would certainly assume that that's
Oh,
CAD.
absolutely.
How can I guess that's, if you look up under the course of studies, it spells that out.
Yes,
Okay.
it does. We don't, the reason we can't say just CAD is because we don't have enough machines and space to do all CAD. So they're working on the board and they go to the CAD and vice versa.
Okay.
Can I get a vote?
I think you've done a good job on, I remember compared to last year, you've really been able to pull them together as far as combining classes, and I see a noted improvement.
And I will, on the next time we meet, I'll have some adjustments that I will note relative to the past.
Any other questions?
A statement, Mr. President. I think the work that you see reflects an interest to provide as many opportunities for our students as possible. At the same time, you've made it clear that this board wants to see the program of studies discussed earlier. However, I want to advise you that the dilemma that Dr. Bond brings to us won't go away, because while the course of studies might be discussed earlier, and you may wish to and intend to adopt a class size limit, which certainly would be helpful, there will always be those situations where you'll be approached with the same tough questions. Are you willing to waive that limit in order for these classes to be offered? And Mr. Allen said it well earlier, one of your dilemmas will always be, do you close the door on kids who committed to 3, 4, or 5 years study on a certain topic, but particularly a more rigorous math or a foreign language? And that's never going to go away unless you simply say, when you do the course of studies discussion, that you will hold to the limits on class size, maximum and minimum, at the time you approve the course of studies, no exception. Then Juan Bond's successor or somebody like him won't be back next year with a list, which essentially means, will you waive the rule you previously adopted? I'm not telling you there's an easy answer, I'm just telling you that it won't go away.
Dr. Bose, I think the corollary to that is, though, that Dr. Bond said he will have more final numbers the next time we meet. And I think we will have a history which will help us in the fall of this coming year to make a little better determination, because then we will have actual numbers as to how many students signed up and participated.
I'm sure that's true.
I know what you're saying, it's a difficult task, and we may have to make some waivers somewhere along the line, but I think that if we have the history, it'll help us in that regard.
I think what it also demonstrates, Pat, is the later we go into the school year or toward the end of the school year, the more reliable numbers we'll have.
Right.
But it becomes increasingly difficult at that late date to make the kind of decisions and changes that Dr. Bond is suggesting he can do at this time.
Well, no, what I'm thinking about is if we can't do anything about this year. February 15th, I think, was when the kids started to choose their courses, or that was the deadline, I believe, Dr. Vaughn, we discussed that. So here we are 2 months later, or less than 2 months later, trying to make a determination whether to keep a course or drop it or combine it or whatever. What I'm saying is, this coming September or October, if we review the course of studies, then we can, when they choose their courses in February of '97, we will have had a better chance to review and make what we consider to be, the appropriate offerings, I hope.
Well, you'll always have the record of the past year.
Yes,
that's true.
That's what I'm saying. So we should have more time than like now we only have a month and a half or 2 months, relatively speaking. But if we make the decision in September or October, we're going to have, 6 months before we offer the courses to the students.
I'm not arguing with Mr. Mosey.
Right, I'm not arguing with you either.
Suggesting that I think it was Mrs. Shears suggested that Japanese is an example of a commitment we made, but the student interest over the years has fallen off.
Yes.
And that's going to happen again in whatever the courses might be.
Well, he says Japanese 1 is 30. We'll have a better idea as to how that carries over to Japanese.
What the board's going to have to decide is, so what happens with Japanese is most of the youngsters are satisfied with a year of Japanese. The board's going to have to decide whether they're going to have any Japanese at all, because the teachers will not come in here for one period a day because there's not enough money in it.
Correct.
And the teachers who teach Japanese can go a lot of places to do it. One of the reasons we're doing 2 and 3 is so we can do 1. And we've got a large class load in 1. And that's the dilemma that we often face with specialists. And that's real. Whether we like it or not, that's real. I'd like to address the issue of study hall as well, because someone said, why can't we get these folks out of study hall? This board may not be aware of it, so I should make you aware of it. That students at the high school must take 38 out of 42 periods. Years ago, they only had to take 36. When these youngsters were taking 36, they could have one study hall every day. We upped the requirements of the high school from 36 to 38. That took a lot of youngsters out of study hall. If you take it up all the way, you run into a problem because of the labs. And it's tough to match every course with a lab. So it's, as I said, we took it up. And when we took it up from 36 to 38, we cut study halls 50%. And not only did we cut study halls 50%, we put study halls in large group instruction room with one teacher. We sometimes have 60, 70 students in it. That same period, we used to have 150, with 3 or 4 or 5 teachers doing it. So a lot of these things, I guess I get nervous when there's this notion that a lot of these creative things haven't taken place, because they have. And the other thing is that we took about 35% of our teachers and put them in places where they're required to be for extra help for students. For extra help for students. And this isn't just extra help for students who are in need of remediation. We have students going to these support rooms who are honor students, who are college prep students. And we felt that was we felt at the time that was a wonderful thing to do with many of those 6 assignments. So that's where a lot of these folks are. We took them out of hall duty and put them in classrooms.
I'd like to see us take more of a challenge. When I see you talk about being nervous about things you hear, I get nervous about things I see. And I look at a list like this and I see some very difficult courses here that are having difficulty being filled. And I think we should take it as a challenge, and also a certain amount of righteous criticism that a school as large as ours is having difficulty filling some of these courses. Somebody told me that Sourton and Wissahickon was having a tough time filling Japanese. That wouldn't surprise me. But we're bemoaning 2,700 people at the high school or thereabouts and yet to come. And we can't fill courses like calculus 2, chemistry 2, blah, blah, blah. Some of these tough courses. We should take that as a challenge. And there should be a real push on the teachers to recruit, to recognize those students that could do more, handle more. I think. That presumes that hasn't been the case. I'm asking that it be done. That more be done. That more be done. Push harder. Push the kids harder. We have so many. I see these tougher courses, and I desire, not enough desire to fill them when we're such a large school, and that's supposedly one of the few positives to a larger school, that you have these kind of course offerings and they can be filled.
Okay, let's bring this part to a close. Any other comments, questions?
I do want to add one other thing.
All right, now let's wrap this up because we're going to have a long night.
In regards to Dr. Bose's comments about bringing this earlier to us to be able to look at it, and we will still always have decisions to make about those exceptions. I wasn't going to ask you if you could do that for us tonight, Dr. Bond, but the process and the guidelines, whether they be self-imposed guidelines or not, for how you take these lists, how you decide what will be broken up into sections, what will be dropped, and what will be combined, I think it would be beneficial to all of us if we understood what process you went through when you look at these classes that just fall out because of sheer numbers, and what are the considerations that go into the way that you've arranged them for us. I don't know if that is...
That could be a manuscript.
It could well be, and I wasn't going to ask for that tonight, but as we consider alternatives down the road, there was a recommendation that says we keep the hard and fast numbers for minimums and maximums, but if we can turn this into a rational process, which I assume it already is, and continue that rational process and everybody understand it, then we can continue to offer as many classes that's possible. And if you can share that knowledge, if it's not already shared among members of your staff, I think it would benefit all of us.
Okay.
I want to close with a
All right,
positive. I think you did a great job with this. I think that we all have to keep in mind that as he's recommended all these courses to be combined, as well as those courses that are being eliminated basically through attrition, that will affect the numbers of the rest of the courses that we have here as far as what's in there. I think that we've finally begun a process of refining our program of studies more in tune with the population of the school. And as these are removed from the schedule, it does help. It will, just as he said, if you're going to spread out if we keep these, then we'll be in a constant battle as to which ones we're juggling between to keep them on. And I actually see that the only way that you're going to bring up your numbers, perhaps in the variety that we offer in this school district, is really through recognizing those that aren't holding their own and move forward and let that take hold. Which it will. It's going to adjust the numbers in the rest of the course's studies as these go through.
We have 150
and we'll be better
courses
prepared for fall.
exceptions for 12.
And usually we are seeing all these courses to be added. There are no courses to be added on this sheet. I believe we did do that in the fall, and that dealt mostly with tech prep courses. And so as I see,
there's only 6 of them that are singled-in courses.
right, and
I don't understand.
I really appreciate it. I think this is one of the best class size recommendation lists that I've seen here in, I don't know, 5 years that I've sat and watched this process. I've only been up here for a little bit, but
This is the
numbers are far more reasonable.
right. It's the third one I've seen, and it's the best one I've seen. And I told you that earlier. I thought you did a good job. Okay, this will bring this portion of tonight's meeting as far as board members' questions. I now open it up to our audience. Again, I'd ask that you'd ask questions only in regards to what we've talked about, the temporary administrative support for summer and the class guidelines under 20. Are there any questions on these topics that we've covered? Ma'am?
Rosalie Elias, Montgomery Township. I have a question and some comments. I have a question for Dr. Bond. I would like to know whether for this year, the upcoming school year, whether there are plans to have an AP biology.
I'll look it up.
I had heard there was, but I did want confirmation.
I'm sure. Do you have a program stamp? Was it offered?
Yes.
If it's offered, it's not on here, it's running.
Okay, that was the assumption that I was under, but I thought I ought to make sure of that first.
If a course was offered and it doesn't show up on here, it's dropped, it is in fact running.
Well, if that indeed is the case, and I'm very pleased that has been brought back. I think we all noticed that AP Chemistry, again, is slated to be dropped. I remember standing up here same time last year, different board, same topic, where we were discussing dropping the AP Chemistry and the AP Biology, and I remember making a plea not to deprive our most capable learners of an appropriate education, and there was some very interesting debate, and as far as I could determine, primarily the determination to drop the AP Chemistry and Biology was cost-related in terms of the numbers not being sufficient to warrant, at that point in time, having the courses. And I remember being assured that should the numbers increase, that it would again be instituted. And just since this is the third May meeting where this has been discussed that I've been to, based on the minutes that I have from the meetings, last year when they were discussing chemistry and biology, there were 10 in biology and 5 in chemistry. And the year previous, for 94, there were 12 in chemistry and, 12 in biology and 8 in chemistry. And in 94, these courses were not on the to-be-dropped list. So I would be under the impression that then these courses did take place in 94. Basically, what I would like the board to consider is that I understand that if you were looking at dropping the AP Chemistry, it would be primarily to save dollars, and we are trying to do that in every way possible since there are budgetary crunches. However, I would like the board to look at, when you're looking at the money that's being saved by dropping a course, such as an AP course, that you
Ma'am,
really
could you
need
begin to conclude your remarks?
Yes,
Your 3 minutes are up.
you need to consider what the cost would be incurred by supplying an equivalent appropriate education at the college level for those students who would fall under the category of gifted. So I
Ma'am,
really
you need to
think you need to
conclude.
consider that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to the next part of our meeting tonight, which is the budget review process. And before we move into that, I would like to make a couple comments and then turn it over to Dr. Bose. At our last meeting, Mrs. Scher did bring up a point of concern after the meeting to me on really what the true teacher's contract, which was settled, what kind of impact that really was on the budget. I do intend to bring that up. I don't know that it will come up tonight. We're going to, but I felt it was an important part. The public needed to hear that, and I will allow time. Probably, I'm going to suppose at this point we want to talk about it on Thursday night, this coming Thursday night. And depending on how long it takes tonight, we may get to it tonight. But again, we're not going to wait until next week. I want to get that out and make sure that we have that well covered.
Mr. President, can that come under personnel?
Uh,
As a conglomerate?
That's what it is for personnel.
It probably could. Are you prepared for that tonight, Dennis?
Well, we weren't really having a separate personnel.
No, we're not.
Remember I
Not
requested.
on our agenda.
Right.
I
Well,
requested
yeah,
that be added.
I know you did. You request, and it is, and we have handled it differently this year, that we haven't had and I've had calls from board members about a concern that we haven't handled personnel as a separate issue. And to be quite frank, I did not go back to Dr. Bose and instruct him that we have to have a separate personnel night. We can talk about that tonight later if we want to address that separately Thursday night, or if we do want to include somehow tonight how that contract does impact the budget.
Well, but Mr. Clemens, there are some other personnel issues, related personnel issues.
Right.
That I personally would like to see discussed, which I really don't think we're going to have time to get to that tonight. Transportation may give us a problem, giving us time to discuss it this Thursday night. And as you know, we've tentatively set aside Tuesday the 14th. Is there any way that we could go ahead and schedule the night of the 14th for the discussion of strictly personnel?
I'd like to try to schedule it, though, this coming Thursday night.
Well, I mean, if time allows us to.
If time allows. I don't know that transportation is going to
didn't-
take up that much time.
I didn't see it on the list.
Right.
And, you know.
Well, let's see how tonight goes.
Okay.
And then
I
can talk, we can ask Art to comment a little bit on how much time he feels he'll need for transportation Thursday night, but we may be able to include it Thursday night and not have to wait till next Tuesday.
That's fine.
Okay? Okay.
Tom, when you do that though, I think as we're moving through with this budget process, we're all adding our comments and some of us are making our points and others are just taking in the information they need to formulate a consensus or of their own sentiment. We will at some point, I would hope, get down to when we're going to formally take a consensus on where the board stands on these issues, and I think that should perhaps be attached with that personnel discussion. So as you're evaluating whether we need a special meeting or whether we can just put personnel on, we need to move forward to where we come to some conclusions
What I've done,
on many of the things that
and I think we're going to have to do that Tuesday night. I think we're going to have a meeting Tuesday night. I've asked Dr. Bose to, as the board discusses, as the different areas of the budget has been brought forward, I've been asking Dr. Bose to make comments, make notes on major areas of concerns and questions. And I think we will have to come back Tuesday night to really come to some type of consensus as to where we will finally go with this budget. I can't see us avoiding Tuesday night at this point.
Okay, because I have several areas there that possible ways of refining the budget. ways that I believe other members of the board could support, but at the same time, as we go through with our discussions, do we deal with them at that point? Or are we going to come together to evaluate
I think we're
and
gonna-
set a direction?
I would suggest, and I would say that we will come together on the night of Tuesday night to bring that to close.
I think Dennis did a great job when he broke down the millage. He responded to my my
You
request.
received that on
Wanting
Friday.
everyone to see
Yeah.
exactly how this millage broke down and where those increases were being generated. And I think he did a great job, so perhaps that should be prepared for actual hard copy for not we as a board received it, but also for the audience as we discuss personnel issues.
Okay. And now I'll turn it over to Dr.
Well,
Bose.
That's a good segue into introducing, with your permission, Mr. President, Mr. Kelly, who's prepared to give the board an update on what's transpired by effort of staff since the last board discussion on the budget. And I am pleased to tell you in advance that Dennis will report a decrease in the number of mills. We don't know whether we're at the position where you want to be yet, but we'll need your help and direction in pursuing that further if that's the case. But at least we can report some progress tonight, and Dennis will give us a quick summary of that, after which then Dr. Bond, Dr. Sugar, and Mrs. Clark will talk about elementary education, secondary education, special ed student services, and they will cover all aspects of that, including personnel as well. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Dr. Bose. As tough as it was to bring before this board a budget of 23 mills, I'm happy tonight to report that we as a staff have taken some of your recommendations thus far and have come up with certain cuts. The first two are those items that we talked about going possibly into a short-term 10-year bond of computer equipment in the amount of $303,000 and buses in the amount of $79,250. We had discussed that as a proposal at the last meeting, and that's still up for your vote at some future date. In addition to that, we've also had staff development cuts of about $170,000. We realized that we could take a cut in the IU service contract of about $100,000. We have $880,000 in there, and Mrs. Clark feels we can bring that down to $780,000. She'll expound on that a little later in part of her discussion. We're also advocating a 10% cut in the supplies, which would realize a savings of about $88,000. They also took a hard pencil, Dr. Bond and Dr. Sugar, to elementary and secondary equipment, and combined they saved about $130,000. All told, with those cuts, we'll save so far 3.1 mils, which would bring us down currently to 19.9 mils. I know they'll be talking about those cuts later, and I know we're still continuing to look at areas that we can cut out of this budget.
3.1.
3.1 mils, so we're down to 19.9.
Thank you.
And with that, I defer to Dr. Bond to start secondary, or Mrs. Clark, I'm sorry.
There are several key highlights this budget year that we want to bring to your attention, and I'm going to begin this evening by briefly discussing the per pupil expenditures, and you'll find this on page 1 and 2 of your budget packets. The per pupil allocations are based on the mid-range projections of the PEL. You'll see on page 2, the total number of students we are projected to have next year is 13,128. This equates to an additional 462 students. Of these 462 students, 146 are projected for elementary, 176 are projected for middle school, and 142 are projected for high school. You'll see that in addition to the regular ed allocations, there is also money set aside for gifted and handicapped, as has been our procedure for many, many years. The per pupil allocations are used for supplies, replacement texts, AV supplies, library supplies, and library books. As Dennis mentioned, we are currently working very hard to see that we can reduce this by 10%, and we will be back to you with that dollar amount. At this point in time, I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Sugar to begin the equipment requests.
Thank you, Judy. If you turn to page 3, what you will see is the revised elementary equipment list. That is a change from the various pages throughout the book that you had received earlier this year. I've combined everything onto this one page for the regular program, the audio-visual services, and library services, and anything that had previously been under principal services has already been cut out completely, so there's nothing left in that category. You also see that in these categories we have new equipment and replacement equipment, and just realize that this equipment does touch regular classes, special area classes such as music, and also the library program for the elementary program K through 6. Again, we, as Dennis had said, we took a hard look at what was in there, and we took out what we thought we could live without, as well as what we thought we could live with what we have for a longer period of time by making do and doing some fixing. But some of these things, such as some of the instruments that we have on here, are very, very old, and they're beyond repair. It would cost as much to fix them as it would to just replace them at this point in time. And after a while, it just does not become cost effective to handle it in that way. And that's really all I have to say about, since there's not a whole lot on here anymore. I think at this point in time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Bond.
I don't know that I have much to add, except that we're on page 4 through whatever. We have, I don't know, there's a lot of pages. We have realized $121,496 in cuts to equipment at the secondary level. Some of that is replacement, some of that is new, all of which we felt that we needed, but it came to a point where we had to do something. I mean, there's something had to be done, and this is what we opted to do. And so that's where we are. That's where we are. We think that the equipment that's left is crucial. Much of the equipment that we cut was needed, but was not crucial. So we're as far as we think we can go with that. But again, we've realized, I think, $121,500 in terms of savings there. We really got to the point with this budget where we knew that something had to be done, so we just start doing it. Just start doing it.
On page 14, you will see detailed all of the equipment requests for the Department of Special Education and Student Services. And we're pretty much in the same place as Dr. Sugar and Dr. Vaughn. These items that are listed here are absolutely essential. Many under the health category are used by the dentist and by the doctors when they come to the school district. We do receive some subsidy back from the state for health also, and any new equipment that we buy, we receive a partial subsidy. Under replacement equipment, we are asking for a wheelchair. The wheelchair absolutely can't be repaired at this point. And also some additional desk chairs. Art has been very good to all of our departments. If a chair can at all be repaired, he's repaired them, but these 7 chairs are now beyond repair. So this is the total equipment list for our department, which is significantly pared down from where we began. Sandy, staff development?
I've been asked to review with you the staff development portion of the budget, and as Dennis has indicated to you, what we have done is projected a savings of $170,914 from the original recommendations that were presented by the department heads and the supervisors. In your packet on page 15, 16, and 17, you'll see some of the adjusted figures and the ways in which we intend to provide the staff development and the curriculum services for next year, primarily using the adjusted calendar and the in-service days and early dismissal days so that we can work toward moving ahead in all of the areas, and also pending some of the recommendations that will be coming forth from the Staff Development Committee on recommendations for staff development for the following year. On page 17 of your packet, the recommendations, in addition to those that will be put through for use on in-service days, would be not to begin any new Goal 1 planning process except for the area of foreign language, because foreign language is going to be one of the areas that the state is going to have us require for September of 1997. So it would be incumbent upon that department next year to look at foreign language in preparation for September of 1997. The curriculum review cycle will be all looked at by the Curriculum and Instruction Committee. One of the matrices that is currently being looked at is 1995 to 2003. Under the strategic plan, we're expecting to get all curricular areas in the next 6 years revised and up to date and up to speed. We would like to continue the implementation of the English Language Arts and Reading curriculum review as it has begun this year. It would be very important for us to continue with that, with the standards and the expectations and the transitions that will impact the rest of the courses. We also need to implement the curriculum in the middle schools based on the reorganization that we're going into. We would also like to take of the 5 in-service days that will be available to us, not the startup days or the end of the year, but to take 2 to 3 days for all curricular areas where we will be looking at the expectation, the standards, the graduation requirements, which again, as I said, will be implemented for the 9th grade class in September of 1997. Utilizing the in-service days and early dismissal days along with the Curriculum Coordinating Council, the Human Resource Department, and the principals to establish the priorities next year for all of the things that could be done on the in-service days. It would look at this point that there would not be any pullouts for any in-service, and induction will be an after-school activity as a condition of employment.
What else?
Did you want to open it up for questions?
I'm just trying to double check
that's what we
what
had
you and I
discussed
talked
earlier.
about before.
We had said
when
we were going to
wanted
open it up for questions
yeah,
at
just,
this point in time of the board.
Okay, and I want to clarify a little bit here. A little bit. Okay, so we are down as far as your presentation. We're down to 2C. We're finished at 2C. Okay, what we'll do
Actually, it was 3B. 3A.
I'm sorry, 3B. There it is. Yes. Just to clarify for the board and for our citizens, what we're going to do is I've decided that we're going to open it up for questions for the board. Okay, right now. Then we'll go through. What did we agree on, Tom? I didn't write it down. Then we go.
Then we'll do all
4
special topics
down to 4C and stop.
Right.
Questions again. Then we'll do personnel and have questions.
That's right.
And then after that, we'll open it up. We'll open it up to our audience. Okay. Everybody clear on that? Yep. I should have announced that in the beginning, and I didn't. I apologize. So let's open it up for questions now on items 1, 2, and 3. Donna?
Thank you, Mr. President. Sandy, on the curriculum, I guess the Goal 1 cycle, or Judy on the Goal 1 cycle, I thought health and phys ed was supposed to be up 2 years ago. What happened to that?
It really wasn't. That was talked about being completed. However, due to strategic planning and not knowing how we were going to package all the rest, we wanted to wait to see how that worked out and then move into health because we would be redoing the whole thing. It was off cycle. We had talked about it because there were some areas that needed to be explored.
So when's it up?
Well, we would begin it as soon as we know what's going to happen with the conclusion of strategic planning.
97, 98, most likely. 96, 97, the only curricular area that we would start with because of the mandate would be foreign language. But all curricular areas next year will be looking at expectations and standards. So everything will be working onto cycle to the new matrix. So then officially it would begin its planning process in 97, 98.
Okay, so a tickler of all courses and when they, all subject areas and when they're up for review will come forward then from, I guess, either one of you.
Yes.
I think a direction that at least I thought 6 members of the board wished to go was at the time when Sandy was placed as handling strategic planning, she was given a budget. And I think something we've never done in the past is when these curriculum reviews come up, there isn't a budget. And we all had a stroke when Reading put forward a budget that involved all sorts of people and overtime and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and we all died because we weren't expecting that. I think these curriculum reviews now, as they come up, have to have a budget and be kept to that budget, monthly reports on it as we put Sandy through and she's kept with it.
I think it's important for this board to know that as Carol Tarozzi and her committee has been working in the strategic plan, They have, in fact, are looking at the process of the curriculum review cycle. We're trying to develop some consistency and some process and some patterns. So I think you'll see something coming out of that in terms of their recommendations.
But how does that relate to the
I think it will-
economics of what it's costing us to do the review?
I think it will all relate, because I think we've gone too far afield in some areas and too tight in other areas. We need to have some consistency. How much are we going to do, to what extent, to what degree, how much involvement, needs assessment,
on
the
committees,
cost.
how many are paid,
Yes,
how many
all
are
of that.
volunteer, et cetera, et
Yes,
cetera.
and I believe that that's something that Carol's committee is looking at completely.
So as each curriculum review subject area comes up, then it'll be attached to a budget?
Yes.
And
a process.
That director responsible for that budget. Okay. Thank you, ladies.
Okay, Mrs. Krieger? None? Bill? Mr. Round?
On the topic of staff development, could you explain the organization of how that's going to work and the process a little bit? And I guess what I'm getting at is, we used to have 2 full-time people do it, and now I'm not sure what we have. Was 2 full-time people overkill? Are we doing it with less? Are we putting less emphasis and priority on it? Do we think it's not important? Or are we doing it better?
Quite the contrary. It is very important, and I think from the original recommendations that were given by the department heads and the supervisors, in terms of the costs that we looked at to really keep everything moving forward, it is a vital and important part, and it is also a mandated part of the strategic planning. Curriculum and instruction, staff development, and assessment have been mandated by the state for school districts to look at. The staff development model is something that the Staff Development Strategic Planning Committee is looking at quite extensively. One of the things I know that they're thinking of and want to do is help involve the Human Resource Department in terms of the planning and integration of the entire staff development piece, so that the staff development piece is a whole total district piece. There are several components to the staff development piece. One piece is induction, which is the mandated program for new staff. And that is being looked at because our induction program is very extensive. We want to know what we need to do effectively and to make sure that we have the quality as we move new staff through our program. We also want to establish some priorities in the staff development. A lot of the Strategic Planning Committee has been looking at is a lot of fragmentation, that everybody's been out doing different things without keeping some type of integration to it. So I think when you see that plan coming forth, you'll see integration, you'll see format, you'll see a process that tries to bring all of the staff development together. It is a vital, important part of our program, and as I said, it's a mandate from the state.
Let me add on to an explanation to your question, Mr. Allen. I've developed a chart to assist the board in analyzing the impact of the new administrative structure and the number of positions as well as the areas of responsibility and cost. I will be sending that to all of you Friday. I think that you'll see directly an answer to your question about to what extent have we maintained a commitment to staff development.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mosey?
Yes, I just have a question. Dennis, on the preliminary budget, page 20 and 21, we have elementary equipment listed, new equipment 8199, replacement 8838. Now I see elementary equipment total 9565. We originally had 17,000. You're telling me we reduced that to 9,500?
Yes, sir, that's how they reduced that.
Okay.
And at the time, the secondary lists were not ready. This is the first time you're seeing them tonight.
I was going to say, I'm looking through here as the doctors were speaking, I was looking through here, and I didn't see any of these other figures in our preliminary budget.
If the board desires.
I'm sure they are in the regular, full blown.
Yes, and we can get you full-blown copies of that.
But just as you look at it, you're only seeing, when you're looking at page 20 and 21, you're only seeing the top portion of page 3 that's in your packet today, which is the regular program. The audiovisual program, which was on 43, and the of your budget book, as well as the library services, which were on the library page, show up. There were over $18,000 worth of cuts.
Well,
To the elementary.
that's what I'm asking, because I
Right.
see page 43, we have some. and-
Right, those were also cut. So
Okay.
if you
So
look
what we're
at the new and
saying
the
is-
replacement equipment that's left, the other things were either cut out or a few were moved to because of the
computer area.
computers, they have been moved possibly to computer
Okay.
science. But this takes care of all those pages that fall under that jurisdiction.
Okay, and the only other question I had was, I see some items, for example, I see a filing cabinet, $462. Then I see a filing cabinet, $394. Speaking of page 43, I see a VCR for $250, another VCR for $200. I see 2 cassette recorders for $160. I see, okay, that's $80. I don't understand the disparity in the numbers.
Are you looking at the original,
I'm looking at my preliminary.
Right, and what we've done is, those figures
they've
have been
changed.
redone. If you look, all 4 filing
Thank you.
cabinets have been
Okay.
combined on the top
That's
sheet.
what I'm asking.
All
Thank you.
4 have been combined on the top sheet for a
Right.
total of $780.
Okay. All right.
All the cassette recorders were basically eliminated. Sometimes you have different recorders for different purposes though, so some are of better quality, okay? Those were eliminated anyway.
Okay.
But, and the
They were just some of
the
the things.
VCRs we standardized into one price. What happens is sometimes you get staff that they're looking at different catalogs and they have different needs. It gets over here and then our purchasing agent though gets the best price that he can, which is probably even lower
Fine.
than what's quoted on these, which are often catalog prices.
Right, I wanted to follow that up.
All right, but what
We
you're
always
really-
standardize things. When
Thank
the
you.
board finally approves them, we standardize them when they go out for bid.
Okay, I just saw some of those, they jumped out at me, I thought.
I can understand
What
that.
would make one filing cabinet, $70 more than the other?
Sometimes they're
I
with locks
understand.
or without
I know,
locks
some are
too.
wider, some are deeper,
Right.
I understand that, but
We
it's just.
standardize those things.
The other thing that
Yes.
we've done with the other thing we've done with the equipment is we've taken some of those low-cost items and put them in the supplies category. So you won't see an $80, a $55, a $100.
Right. That was just a little, I was just trying to understand what's in our packet tonight as opposed to what is shown in the preliminary budget. So what you're really saying then is that $17,000 figure's been reduced to $95.62. Thank you.
And
That's
I
all
think,
have.
Mr. Mosey, the thing that you're interested in is an updated version of this that contains those very things that your questions targeted.
Right.
And, Mr. Kelly, when do we expect to get the new version of this in the
I
hands of the
plan to get
board?
one out as soon as the board adopts the preliminary budget, then we'll present a new preliminary budget, if you will, that will await your final adoption. But all the new equipment lists will all be incorporated into the second preliminary budget document.
When we get that, because we're supposed to vote on the preliminary budget next Thursday.
Correct. If you vote on that, you will have that by probably Wednesday of the following week, if we can get that to you. As soon as I know what.
Wait a minute, I'm confused. We have to vote on the preliminary budget, and you're gonna give us the figures after we vote on the preliminary budget?
Yeah, I'm
No,
sorry.
you
Well,
have it on the agenda.
I
It's on
thought
the
the board would rather have a budget that has the cuts out of it. That's what I'm saying. Well, I guess I'm waiting to see what cuts you want to adopt. And then deduct those so that I would prefer to give you a budget that shows 19.9 mils rather than 23, if that's what the board opts to do.
Well,
But then it's at your pleasure. If you want another document.
That, we probably won't settle that until Tuesday night.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But I think it's safe to assume that the cuts represented by your introductory remarks, moving the increase from 23 to 19.9 would not be objectionable, or the board is going to speak up tonight. And so we could give them an advanced look at the budget as is represented by our comments tonight,
And
so
Thursday night.
that the figures that we've talked about show up in this document, even though it's still a preliminary budget.
Correct. Well, once the board
It's
makes
just
that
a-
decision, you can have a document in
It's just
2
another
days.
printing.
I just need 2 days in order to get the computer changes done and get it reprinted. So if you give me the okay, say Thursday night, you'll have it for the next Tuesday.
Okay.
And you'll have it. prior to your adoption of the preliminary budget.
Go ahead, Sheree.
I just have a question in regards to curriculum and staff development, Dr. Mangano. The cost listed here at $98,022. I don't know if you have a copy of the big budget, but I'm on page 66. Account 2260 under instruction and curriculum development services. I think it's the third item down, K through 12 staff development.
250,000.
250,000, that one?
It's 250,000.
I need to ask my question. I apologize to the audience, but I'm noticing a discrepancy.
The one that says 250,000?
That's correct.
Yes. When we re-added all of that, the reality, in fact, was that should have been, if we had stayed with the original, would have been 266,680. When we looked at the adjustments, we brought it down to 79,086.
So that $250,000 figure now is $79,000?
086, yes, because we have recommended to use the in-service days for accommodating the things that we wish to do and keeping any new Goal 1 curriculum revisions at hold until we can see what direction we're going with the standards and with the recommendations for expectations.
Okay, and then under that, the staff developer and tech
Coordinator, yes.
How is that to be reduced then?
That is not reduced, and I need to defer to Dennis on that one.
Right,
Okay, 'cause
Mrs. Krieger.
that's an increase of $96,000 from this year.
Mrs. Krieger, well, I guess we're really looking budget to budget. That figure will be reduced when Dr. Bose does release to you his new administrative structure. That reflects the old administrative structure, and when he releases that to you Friday, that will also be incorporated into the additional preliminary budget.
You'll get that in Friday's.
That'll be in Friday's packet.
Okay.
And Mrs. Krieger, to answer the question I think that Mr. Allen was also asking, there is one staff developer that we're looking at in this budget. One position for one staff developer.
That's right. That's to replace the lady that left, isn't it?
To replace the two we had in 94, 95.
2 years ago.
Right.
She's in a brush.
Okay, can we come over to this side for questions?
Just one more question from this side. Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Do you have any kind of a program or a way in which industry can donate to the school those things that we could use? I know that the VOTEC has a situation where some place closes down and they have desks, chairs, this, that, or whatever, that close scrutiny is made of what there is to donate, and the board approves whether they'll accept those donations or not. Do we have such an opportunity?
We have in the past, and we were quite successful with Merck and Company, and that was through a board member that is no longer on the board, and we have not had that. We have not been fortunate enough to have that happen since that time.
Do we have an active solicitor? Somebody that solicits that opportunity?
I do solicit as much as I can. One of the things that's happening with major plant closings is they're sending it to auction. And it's not uncommon to have an entire auction of a facility with its contents, such as these in Northville. But I would like to try to activate our Merck contact. That was very, very good in the past.
And possibly with Kyle, there's maybe an opportunity with, tax receipt,
I would say, I'd add to that.
especially the bankruptcies.
That Ferrero Cadillac completely furnished our conference room at the high school, and arts people just had to go down and pick it up. So where we hear that that's around, we do it. And that was a lot of good furniture too. So I don't think we have a systematic approach to it, but sporadically it's happening.
Sounds like a new program. Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
any more questions over here? Let's swing over to this side. Start with John. David.
I did have some additional questions about staff development, but I think I'll wait until Dr. Bose puts the rest of that package together so that I understand what that whole effort is going to look like.
Okay. Vicki.
Yes, I guess I'll do elementary first. It's only a couple of quick questions here. Regarding the musical instruments, such as the tenor, the sax, a few of these, are they for the regular music program or are they for the pull-out special
It's for the
instruction?
band program.
I
This would be
thought-
for the band program.
Right, I thought that the students there, other than cello, that they rented their
They do, but-
instruments for themselves.
They do in most cases. There are a few instruments that we keep, though, because some students would never buy some of these instruments, okay? At least not to try them and get started. So we generally have a few of those instruments to try to round out the band. Okay, we have some that the students can have on loan, okay? But in most cases, they do rent those instruments.
Right, now how do we explain that we have mostly, when these things come home, parents are told that they must be able to, provide for an instrument, whether you purchase one or whether you pay the $44 a month that I would pay for my son to rent a sax. And then on other circumstances, we're actually financing for a special program with instruments that are not accessible to the rest of our student body. In other words, are these the type of instruments that we would have in our music program for the rest of the
As long as I've been in
student
this district, and I've been in this district a long time, and I was in the music program from the beginning, there were always instruments that I can remember at the elementary school that were available. For instance, if a kid plays a trumpet, and they had 20 trumpet players in elementary, there might have been a baritone or two around where the music teacher would encourage one or two students to, hey, we need a baritone player here. Could we have an instrument here that we'll even let you try. That's how I always understood
I wonder,
it.
why would anyone rent for especially with your students just starting out, if push comes to shove, the district's
To be very honest with you, there are instruments that are popular and there are instruments that aren't popular. A lot of people don't want to play the tuba.
Oh, be careful then.
I know. That's why I said that. Now, we have our exceptions.
Oh, I wasn't an exception. I was one of the people you're talking about.
But you can switch them over.
It's
and
been like,
it's been that way
years.
for a long time. And there again, it helps the band program by rounding out the band so it doesn't turn into a drum and bugle corps.
The other thing that
It's
happens.
a band.
For the elementary band.
The other thing that happens with those instruments is many of those instruments go to folks who can't rent them.
And that happens also.
Absolutely.
Well, that's what I wondered,
hard to
because
carry as
I will
often.
tell you, one of my problems really has been with it, that there are parents out there who can't afford to rent the instruments. They can't introduce their children into the program because they don't have the $44 a month, yet they finance the teaching staff to teach those who can. And it certainly isn't incorporated as a part of our overall music program. It's not something that we feel is owed to each and every one of our students as a part of the traditional music program, but we do make them available for this specialized service. The parachute that's listed here, 24-inch diameter, is that for sports? Is that one of those things you throw up in the air?
It's for the gym class.
For the gym class. Okay.
We never leave the ground.
Never leave the ground with it, okay.
We had, if that came into question, we were going to, if that came into question, if the parachute came into question, we were prepared to demonstrate it with board members so that you could see what the real thing is.
And Mrs. Shar was the first one, right?
Throw up to give a signal
and you run under it. It's used in the gym class.
And we were gonna let the tuba player go first.
Yeah.
I was saying, it had to have a very small carrier, I guess, 24-inch. Okay, now on to staff development. These positions were not in our reorganization chart, neither in the finances nor in the organization scale. They weren't being included, as you recall. You heard some people even wonder whether we were including them. I see also a tech coordinator. What is that going to be?
That will be dropped. That was the original terminology, Mrs. Scher, for that account. That was the original terminology when the other two people were there. That will be dropped when the new organizational chart comes out.
Okay, under the salary aspect, not medical benefits, but under the salary, it is now being, it is still listed at $100,000. I assume this isn't Sandy. Sandy's allocated under a different line, correct?
Long-range planning.
That's correct.
Right, long-range planning, so this is a new position other than what was included in the organizational chart, so we're gonna now have another administrator that, be on that list. But why would we have $100,000?
No,
Well,
it's
that's
not,
not-
it's not an administrative position.
It's not, and again,
Well,
without
if
being
it's not
redundant, without intending to be redundant, I think all your questions, Mr. Shearer, will be answered with the document you received Monday. I will show what was budgeted for 95, 96, what did I say?
Monday.
Friday. I will show what was budgeted for the current school year, what the board has approved for the next school year, and so you can see comparisons that are comparing apples and apples and oranges. I projected the salaries or recapitulated the salaries currently paid to the staff holding those positions, or projected what we would pay those staff if they were on board right now, so you can compare apples and apples. And that will be on a chart that you will get Friday, and I believe it will answer all your questions.
Well, for right now, since we are on staff development tonight, not on Friday or thereafter, there's $100,000 listed here. Is that for one person's salary? Because
No.
benefits are subcategories.
No, that will be divided according to the new chart. That will, just the only, as I said it in the opening remarks, the only new positions that were from the new organizational chart that are shown are the assistant superintendent for curriculum and the deletion of the assistant superintendents for both elementary and secondary. The other categories were all kept status quo until Dr. Bose does release that with his salary figures.
Dennis, I think her question is, what does that $100,000 represent?
Yeah, how do you have that figure there if you don't know what it means?
The figure for $100,000, what's it for?
The $100,000 represents apparently 2 salaries. That's what I think.
Well, that's
Mr.
what I'm
Moses.
asking, and yet he said there's one person.
I think when Mr. Schmidt put that in, I think he was thinking of 2 salaries. That's why we're,
Well, we have numbers with no meaning. We have administration numbers that are irrelevant, they're part of the past, they're not, they're not.
Vicki,
But I think
in
you have
all
to give
fairness
Dr.
to really
Bose a
what's going
chance
on
to-
right now, I mean, we're going through a transition of personnel director. Dr. Bose has just come up with his new, he's got with his new structure. We've got to be a little flexible here for some numbers that aren't quite accurate.
Well, these numbers were brought to us tonight. Somebody dealt with them, and we dealt with changing a lot of other numbers. Numbers were adjusted from the budget. I would think that would have been the time where when you're reviewing your numbers as to how tight they are, you've got $100,000, and you're talking one person, that's a high starting salary.
Well, let me say this, frankly, the original numbers that went into this first draft of the budget were not accurate. We're now attempting to make them accurate, and I think you can appreciate the delicacy of the matter because we've had a major change in personnel.
Well, I guess my point is to revisit the 100,000, if you can sit here and tell me that you don't know what it applies to.
It definitely will be revisited. I think if you were to look at 95, 96, I think that figure was in there for 95, 96, assuming there would have been a teacher on special assignment
Right,
as a
and that's
staff
95.
developer, which we did not have. If, as originally had indicated, a tech coordinator position was put in, that tech coordinator position and the staff developer position would have equaled 100,000. As we're looking at it right now,
You'll remember when I talked to you
we're
about
pulling it back.
the change in organization, I told you I thought I could project savings if we had the new positions compared to the positions budgeted that were unfilled. And that's the difference. There are positions in the budget we've never filled, and now we'll never have. There's a new administrative structure that you approved that will take its place and will spend less money in the future than we would have spent in the present. And my chart will show you that. I know it's confusing, and I ask your indulgence to see the chart and then give me all the questions that you'll have answered after you have an opportunity to look at the chart, which I believe will explain it to you.
So what you're saying, Dr. Bose, at this point in time, disregard staff developer, tech coordinator for $100,000?
Yes. In fact,
It'll be
Dennis knows that in the conversation he and I had today, that he will get the chart to check it for numbers, to make sure the math is accurate, and also to begin to plug in the savings it anticipates in the next publication of this.
Thank you.
Okay,
And not
but
only that, to
it's
change,
new on
to
this
change
sheet.
the titles, so to change the titles of the ASN so that they don't confuse you. That they're not
Okay.
the old titles, they will be the new titles with the new descriptors.
Right, I saw that. That's what I meant. But when we're reviewing it. And I do want to thank Dennis and Sandy or whoever helped revisit this. You're probably wondering where this one came up. Transportation I slightly addressed, and it's one of the things that what I wanted to speak about when we were able to do a wrap-up or some direction. I really appreciate the review of this. I had concerns through finance liaison when I asked questions regarding the $250,000 that was in here for K-12 staff development, being for substitute time, particularly when you approved the budget that added more in-service days than we've ever had in this district. And it didn't make sense that we would be need to pull staff out and have them replaced with substitutes because we were doing it during what instructional days we now have designated for teaching students. And I assume that's what you're reacting to, Dennis, and
Yes.
through our conversations.
It is, Mrs. Sharp, that's what Dr. Mangano.
It just seemed to me we were doubling up our efforts in twofold without carrying it over to the effect that it has, that when you have all the extra in-service days, you should have less reliance on replacements and substitutes in the classrooms. So I firmly support the alterations that have taken place there. I guess the only thing I would still say that of my list of things, Dennis, that we've spoken about in this area is still the question regarding the training for staff developers. I have, that's listed on page 67 of your detailed budget. I don't think you can find it on the preliminary. You may. I don't think the detail's there for that. But
Yes,
there's
Mrs. Sharp, Dr.
30,000.
Mangano and I talked about that today, and I think she can explain what's included in that $30,000.
I think because it's been a year since we've really had a staff developer in place, and we need to make sure that we can get the best possible candidate for that position to work with the Human Resources Department. What has happened in the past is that we have provided opportunity for the staff developer, who in fact is going to provide the training for the staff to be trained in specific areas that may be the direction for the staff development for that year or for the ongoing years. So that was put in at a figure that we're not sure will remain that high until we have a direction in terms of the staff developer that we will be having in there.
But is this $30,000 on top of the salary? I mean, I would hope that when we're searching for someone in staff development, it might be nice to look for someone that's already had experience in that.
Yes, we will.
Is it for training for the developer that we intend to hire?
No, I think we're trying.
Or for the staff?
No, this would be for the staff developer. And sometimes when you have a person that you want to bring on board and you're having a specific initiative, you might want to have them trained in a specific area that they might not have a specific expertise in. Because it's very difficult to find a staff developer trained in all the areas that a district might want to go through into initiative. So this would be important to have some funds available if we needed them for a staff developer to be trained in the areas that the district might be headed toward.
Sandy, I have a feeling, going from our past history, this staff development position is going to be paying probably in excess of $50,000. You're probably going for your more experienced educator. $30,000 as compared to even past history when we did have two on board of $1,300, and neither of them were in that position for very long at the time, as well as $2,000 to a $30,000 annual tuition in order to teach the staff developer to be able to teach the staff. That's a little troubling to me. I would hope that we could, if the pay range is as I would expect it, I would hope that we could find someone out there with some experience.
We certainly will take that under advisement.
I'm sure that this $30,000 is going to be combined in some way with the reorganization of these numbers on page 66 that we just discussed to accommodate the salary that you're thinking would be more in line for somebody in that position. But I need to bring this up because I was under the impression, Dr. Bose, that in your reorganization plan, Dr. Mangano was going to assume the duties of not only planning, but of staff development. Has that changed?
We want to shift the major responsibility for staff development to the Office of Human Resources. And that is not to say that Dr. Mangano and others won't play a critical role. They will. But the major responsibility has to be in the office that has responsibility for the selection of staff and the evaluation of staff and the continuing employment of staff, and that's the Department of Human Resources.
I understand that.
The Department of Human Resources will have more time to do that in the future because it will do less work in teacher selection than it did in the past. And principals and assistant principals will play a greater role in teacher selection in the future.
Mr. Clemens, this is precisely why I think that this board needs a separate night for the discussion of personnel. Because I think there is a tremendous amount of confusion and some double talk that I have heard in relationship to decisions that this board has made, in relationship to the reorganization, what is in this preliminary budget, what is now coming to us in another preliminary budget on this Friday, in relationship to how this board and how this district is going to proceed administratively in the future. And I really want to insist that we in fact have a designated time for the discussion of personnel, because before I can feel comfortable voting on even a preliminary budget, I need to know exactly who's on first, who's on second, and who's on third in relationship to the administrative staff, and what it's going to cost us. So, and this is, this just.
Well, we need to take a break.
Well, yeah,
Should we
should we jump in?
take a break? We can debate that all night. I mean, mass confusion, I don't know that I agree with that.
I didn't say mass
Well, something
confusion.
confusion,
She said
major confusion.
I said, in my own mind, there was confusion.
Well, no, you turned it stronger than that, Mrs. Krieger, but we will cover personnel. Let's take a 5-minute break. Let's reconvene. Where were we? There was some talk, and I just need to reiterate, Mrs. Krieger's concern, Mrs. Shirk's concern. I think I heard enough concern tonight that we definitely need to block out an amount of time Thursday night just to talk personnel issues. And we will do that. We will cover transportation first, and we will allot an amount of time to talk specific personnel issues. So I'd ask board members if there's any questions you could ask ahead of time, Dr. Bose or Dennis, between now and Thursday, ask those questions. Again, the original, there was some confusion tonight. Ken had made note to me that the board members did receive a thick, detailed budget in the very beginning, and sometimes tonight we were going back and forth in this detailed original budget, and there were salaries put in that original budget when Mr. Schmidt was still our director of personnel, and there are some things in there that have changed and will continue to change. So there are some discrepancies, and I understand the concern and the questions, and I've talked to Dr. Bose about this while we took the break, and we will try to address these concerns on Thursday night. Certainly we won't answer every question, but we'll give it a try.
Mr. Clemens, if I can say one thing, as you said, if you could give us a call, if there are certain issues that you think the public should know, there will be no problem with asking those questions.
Right.
But if you could just give us a little notice.
Right.
Due to the number of personnel we have.
And just for the public, a typical example of it, in our thick, detailed budget, part of Mr. Schmidt's salary was in the transportation department. That's why it showed the transportation, I don't know, let's use a number of $100,000. I mean, so all of that's changed already. With Dr. Bose's new plan. So there have been a lot of changes, and the board, there is some confusion with the board just on when we do look at these numbers. We're getting new numbers all the time, and it's difficult for us even tonight as we receive our sheets as we walk in here. We're getting new information. I'll say daily and maybe by the minute sometimes.
Well, Mr. President, that's a good sign, because this board charged the administration to beat on those numbers every single day as a day-to-day responsibility now until this budget is concluded. So that's exactly what we should have expected all along, that these numbers were going to change every day as the cabinet and Dr. Bose works on this budget. So I see it as a good sign that there are so many discrepancies now, because you've made those changes before they even came here.
But what we'll do is, now that I've said that, as far as tonight, we will cut off I gotta find the right page. Bear with me. Under special topics, we will move on after a little bit more discussion. We'll move on to special topics. But we won't cover personnel tonight. We'll talk more personnel on Thursday night, unless there's some things that pardon me? Pardon me? Under 4. We need to move on to 4, okay? Special topics. Okay? Elementary, secondary, special. But as far as specifically talking on personnel, we'll hold that till Thursday night, okay? I have a question though. It's my turn. Getting back as far as the presentation, like on page 2, I just have a question on number of students. It says an additional 462 students are projected for the 96-97 year, and that looks right to me. And the reason I say that, looking at our past numbers, from 94 to 95, we had an increase of 445. From 93 to 94, we had an increase of 468. And then in 92 to 93, we had an increase of 334. I'm just, simple math, I'm not coming up with this number. I see that we're at 12, I think we're right around 12,520 kids or something right now.
For the 90th day, Mr. Clemens, we were at 12,520 students.
Right.
Right.
And
the 10th day was 12,513.
13, right. So right around 12,520. And now I see the 13,128, and I looked at this in my PEL, and that was the mid-range PEL number.
Right.
But where's the discrepancy there?
200 some more students.
Yeah.
That's my question.
We had like 12.9.
In other words, I would expect this to go up, I would use a number of about, I'll round it to 450, and, somewhere around 12, I guess about 100 less kids, I'm thinking, and I'm wondering where we're coming up with
200.
We have
100 to 200, whatever.
We've gone over this time and time again. We've gone mid-range to mid-range. I did not use the actual 10th day or 90th day and compare that to the mid-range. I went what we were projected for the mid-range, which was 12,666, to this year's to the upcoming mid-range, which was 13,128. And they're the figures that I used. We had discussion about this, and we said we would do comparison mid-range to mid-range, not actual to mid-range. So
Okay, but
therein you see the discrepancy.
Okay, but if, for next year, which I would certainly think we'll probably have 12.9 or just shot, somewhere between 12.9, not quite 13,000. If we do indeed we don't have the 13,128 and we're budgeted for 13,128, let's just use for conversation purposes 100 less kids, okay? And let's round it to $8,000 a kid, okay? Okay, so we're talking $800,000 difference that the dentist budgeted. Would that go into fund balance, or how does that work as far as the reserves that we would have if we don't really have that many kids?
To my knowledge, Mr. Clements, this is the only area in the allocations that they've budgeted for those additional kids. That
is correct.
Yeah, I mean, they're not. We haven't.
Because I'll tell you right now, I mean, it's on tape
else.
right now, but there's no way. I don't think we're going to hit 13,128.
Well, we have had, and I guess this is my 5th year through,
Right.
I know we've had this discussion year in and year out, and we had a lot of discussion in cabinet what numbers to use, because we have always used mid-range to mid-range comparisons. That's what we used. If you want an adjustment on that, you want me to look at actual, and you want a reduction, we could do that too.
Well,
The reality is, we probably won't hit 13,128, but we don't know that. I'm curious to see what the 180th day enrollment is, and to see how close we get to the 12,666, because traditionally we have run closer to the mid-range than the low-range projections, which is why we have used them.
Okay.
So, if it's your pleasure, we can reduce that.
Yeah, again, and I brought this up at a couple meetings ago, that there's just no way we're going to hit. There's no way we're going to hit 13,128. I think it's going to be more like 12,9, and I see 100 less kids than what's projected, and I could see about an $800,000 savings of really what is projected here.
Mr. Clemens, you can't, on that projection, you can't take your tuition rate times the number of youngsters.
Okay, what number would you use?
Well, the only place it affects the budget, quite frankly, is in this account on a per pupil expenditure.
Okay.
Because those 100 kids, to use the tuition rate, you can't figure it that way.
The tuition rate is
could be absorbed into classrooms where you already have teachers, but we didn't anticipate additional teachers.
Okay.
And the tuition rate is actually calculated after the kids are enrolled, and the budget is finalized. Is that an audited
It's really,
figure?
well, in fact, I just got the tuition rates that
For
we can
last
use
year.
for this year. It's based on last year's AFR.
Tuition rates generally lag a year behind.
Correct, Dr. Rose.
So it's not a good way to budget.
Okay.
Tom?
How much money would we be talking about, Dennis, if we had 100 fewer kids?
So if you had an average of
Well,
$60,
yeah,
you're looking
100,
at
but it's
$6,000.
Yeah,
That was the point.
That's the point, okay.
Yeah, we haven't budgeted teachers for 13,000 kids.
So it's
We
not
have not.
Okay.
a
Alright.
significant amount of money.
Okay.
Tom, while you're bringing up this, though, this is something that too we ought to look to revising. The formula, Dennis uses it because it's the only way he's thought of to be fair, but if you look at it, you will see that the allocation is by students times the set tuition, regardless of really the starting base of the school. As you know, perhaps we can revisit the zero-based budgeting so that we get down to actual needs versus expenses, as opposed to some standardized formula, because, you know, if you think about it, certainly Bridle Path, no offense, Tom, or Walton Farm, those schools that have recently opened up, that had the influx of computers, the influx of equipment and supplies, which comes with opening a new school and having it come under the construction funds, are not at the same base and facing the same needs as perhaps an older school such as Knapp or Culp or Montgomery. Well, Montgomery had some renovations.
Excuse me,
but-
though, this doesn't take into account anything such as computers or anything
No.
like that. This is for
strictly a
paper and
student
pencils.
charge.
And if
And
anything,
supplies.
Bridle
Student
Path
charge.
and
Those
Walton
are-
Farm doesn't have the library books,
Right.
the paper, the pencil, it doesn't have any backlog,
Okay.
not as nearly
Right.
as much,
Okay.
because they haven't
It's
been in
strictly a
existence.
student
for
charge.
But
What do
to
you mean,
answer
but
my
you-
original
you had the
question,
stock-
you answered it. The 462 is just the mid-range to mid-range year to year.
Right.
Okay.
Whether you're saying you're allocated for computers, I asked Dennis what happens with the basic supplies. I thought as I understood it, for the discretionary spending, it was at the discretion of the principal as to how they designated that money.
It's at the discretion of the principal in these areas. Like, one year a principal may opt to put more money into library books than they will into general supplies, depending on what kind of inventory that they currently have. Or they may put it into AV rather than general. I mean, it's,
The biggest,
that's
the
where the
biggest-
option is.
The biggest two
Yeah,
things
it's
where
not
elementary
equipment.
principals put money is library books, and even bigger than that is the bid items, such as paper, pencils, books, all those kind of supply
Right.
materials.
Yeah.
There's very little left over, and that's why we have these lists, such as the elementary equipment list that I'm bringing forward today, or the computer, which we're looking for at Bond, because if you look at a school like, say, Bridle Path, which I'm very familiar with, you're only talking about $38,000, which for an entire year isn't a large amount. Until you take into account all the things that have to be done.
Most
And I
things
just,
put
I just had
disposable-
one more question or comment on this, in this area. Earlier, you all talked about the supplies, and I remember last year during the budget process, when Tom Persing was here, we did talk supplies, and there was a great scare that went out through the district. As a matter of fact, letters were sent
Right.
home, and as a board member, I was very disappointed to see those letters go out from building principals and from people involved, and then I was encouraged to see a follow-up letter go out that supplies would not be a problem. Will supplies be this year status quo from last year?
Or we make major adjustments.
Because-
We had talked about status quo in the original budget, now we're talking about 10% less. The original presentation tonight called for 10% less in the category that supplies.
Well, let me just say, if we're going to, if such a decision does
Yeah,
come
we don't
forward,
get that, I'd like Ken to clarify that. We don't, bring that up again. You said that quite nicely.
I said in our discussion of a 10% cut, we did not consider that we were expecting parents to begin to buy supplies.
right.
No.
That's correct.
Let's
Right.
let's not have
That's
that
what I was gonna say, let's
Right.
not send it out in August.
Exactly,
If
and
that's the
that's
case.
why I wanted to bring that point out, because that was discussed earlier, and I just want to make sure that that the public heard that, because, again, don't want it to happen this year, what happened last year.
Plus, no letter like that should ever go out again without Dr. Bose's permission.
Correct.
And in all fairness, we were talking about a lot more than 10% last year. And we were talking about a lot more than principal discretion too. That was a different ballgame altogether.
It was,
Okay.
Mr. Clemens, from my perspective, from the amount of things that were ordered late in the year, I don't think this would hurt, and it will not cause parents to have to buy supplies whatsoever, or we would have never recommended it.
Okay, thanks. I wanted to clarify that. Could we bring this part to close? Are there any outstanding questions? Okay, let's move on to item number 4, which would be special topics K-12. And again, we'll wrap up after C, special education student services tonight, and then we'll open it up to the public for question or comments. Back to Tom.
Okay, I just have 2 topics that I'd like to bring up, and first is the Merck Institute for Science Education, which is also called MISE. When you hear that term, that's what that stands for. This program has been around since 1993, and it's been a wonderful partnership with Merck and Company, used to strengthen science, math, and technology. On page 18, we do have a graph chart for everybody to look at. While you're getting to that, just some of the things that the MISE partnership does is provide quality curriculum and equipment to support inquiry-based learning. It helps establish a science resource center. It's designing and implementing assessment strategies, improving and expanding community support for science and technology, as well as math, through helping to fund the math and science nights and technology nights that are being held in many of the schools. And a big part of MISE is that it provides professional development that will help our teachers instruct the children in science and mathematics more effectively through updated curriculum. The Leader Teacher Institute, as well as the Peer Teacher Workshops, which are to begin this summer, are part of the way that Merck does handle these initiatives and put those things forward. When you look down at the bottom, you will see that as we're working through the MISE initiative, we're getting more and more hands-on lessons in and increasing the expenditures that are going out. But as we're doing that, we are also getting more and more funding from MISE itself. Right now, in our current budget, and you won't find this in one line, it's kind of spread throughout the entire budget in different areas. For math, here are some things for science, here are some other things for technology. There is $351,000 put in by the district, and we just got confirmation this morning that MISE will be putting in $400,000 towards their share of the budget. Okay, now that was not reflected because we haven't even worked out all the details with MISE. I was on the phone with Dr. Paravano just this morning. We initially had put in the budget $220,000, that there would at least be that much in there. And just this morning, like I said, during a phone call with him, he has agreed to give us even more money than that, which can be used then to help offset some other things. Also, we are very happy to announce that Dr. Paravano and the MISE Consortium will be awarding North Penn a grant for technology in the amount of $35,000. That's not part of the budgeting process. That's a one-time grant that they will be offering to us. Okay?
Yes. That one-time grant, can we use that against this program, or is that a separate program?
That's a separate program, and it's designed for technology. So the one thing that, when we're looking at the MISE amount of $400,000 and our amount of $351,000, that's 47% is our cost, 53% is their cost. And we had said that we would keep it at basically, for this year, a 55-45 ratio, so we're extremely close to that. Realize that this money that MISE is giving us, the extra money that they're giving us, has to be used for other things that occur that will help with science, math, or technology education, which is their bailiwick. if we end up cutting, say, that in half, if we cut that 351,000 in half, they will cut their matching funds in half, okay? Because it is a 55-45 partnership, okay? And what we have done is, some of what makes the jump look even more dramatic than it is we, as a district, have been not claiming some of the things that have been math and science related that the other 3 districts in the consortium have been claiming in the past. So you do not, part of what you see as this dramatic jump for this initiative is because what we're doing is we're claiming some things that we should have been claiming all along, that were just never put in that fact sheet, okay? And now it is, and Dr. Paravano, has gone along with that and has agreed to that. And as a matter of fact, during our conversation this morning, said that in the past, a district half our size had been getting as much or more money than we were getting because they were spending as much or more money. And again, with a lot of work with Donna Brown and Dave Decker, we've tried to really equalize that and make sure we're getting our fair share of this MISE initiative money. And that's what this reflects.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you like me to move right on to the reading program?
I have another question.
Well, I was.
Do you want to take the questions now or at the end? Mr. Clemens,
We originally talked about we would do questions, we would cover A, B, and C, and then have questions. If that's, hopefully that's okay.
Okay.
Go ahead and move on, Tom.
Okay. As far as the reading program, the main emphasis that we're looking at tonight is the Reading Recovery Program here in the North Penn School District. You'll see those notes starting on page 19. That also started in February of 1993 with the initial teacher leader training being in the 1993-94 school year when Sue Durstein went to New York University to become a trained reading recovery leader teacher and establishing Bridle Path as the elementary site. Our first year of implementation last year, 94-95, we serviced 55 children and we had a 63% discontinued rate. This year, in year 2 of implementation, we have served 89 children and we hope to have a discontinuing rate, as it looks right now, of 73%. So you can see that's a 10% jump, and that's as we get more people involved with the program who have a little more experience, the implementation process becomes much more effective and the figures go up, and that is the way it normally occurs with a new program of this nature. The other benefits that you get from this program is that there is increased emphasis placed on staff development for primary teachers because the reading recovery teachers do work very, very closely, especially with their first grade counterparts. And there is, of course, increased contact with parents of the reading recovery students. What we are hoping to do for the 1996-97 school year, which would be the 3rd year of implementation, is on page 20. We're hoping to maintain the same level of services using the 14 reading recovery teachers. And we expect the project to service approximately 133 children next year. We would also be able to sell training slots to Wissahickon, Colonial, Abington, and possibly 2 other school districts, and continue working with classroom teachers on effective early literacy instruction. Judy?
I just wanted to make a few remarks that the Reading Recovery Program is really a preventative program. And we use many preventative programs in the school district, such as instructional support teams or math support or tech prep. You may not see the results right away, but if you read anything at all about the development of children, you know that the earlier you get to these children with support, the greater the likelihood is their chances of success later on. My concern with this program from the angle that I look at it is that many times children that don't get support end up in special education for, say, a reading problem, when really it's not a special education problem per se. So this program to me has represented a preventative approach in the right direction, and I just want to share that with you.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's keep moving on. What's that?
What's the question, please?
We were gonna
I
hold
just wanna
questions.
I'm having trouble finding the exact budget item in the detailed budget, Mr.
Doesn't
Kelly,
exist.
on reading and recovery. Could you tell me what page it's on, please?
Mrs. Krieger, those teachers have been included in with the regular teachers. It's hard to, you can't see in the detail budget just the reading recovery program. Those teachers are included in with the regular teachers. Like the reading recovery teacher at Gwynn Noor is included in with regular salaries Gwynn Noor.
Instructional staff.
Instructional staff with the rest of the reading staff.
What about
The only reading teachers that are pulled out separately are the Chapter 1 teachers, since that's a federal program.
Everything
Yeah,
on the
hold on
agenda
here,
tonight has a dollar attached
hold
to
on.
it.
Everybody agreed that we'd hold questions to the
Okay.
end of the
All right, fine.
presentation,
Okay,
all right?
then we'll ask
And we will
that.
definitely come back to this question, because I know board members have this, where this item is. So let's continue.
Okay, I'm on for cost of middle school reorganization. I'm glad to hear Mrs. Mendel say it's okay to change figures as we speak.
As long as they're downward, go.
It's a minus sign in front of
With
it.
the tuba
Okay.
players taking a lot of talent last year tonight.
If you had that same page, but under extra duty, would you add groundskeeper there to that list of things that we do? Under that top one, and minus $5,450. So that total comes to $344,550. Originally, that was a $357,000 package. Art found $7,000 in transportation, and we found $5,000 in salary. So we're down to $344,550 for that extra duty package. On this paper, the only thing that is not included in the budget book is security. I'm not sure that it's fair to put security under reorganization, but we put it here. Because if we had 1,400 students, if we kept the ninth grade the way it is, we probably would still been asking for a security person. Because we had some concerns. Is that all right? So, but what we're asking for now is a security person for each middle school, and the moving wasn't included. So the $70,940 was not originally part of the reorganization package I gave you. So the total reorganization movement package is $612,205. The equipment is in your budget book. All those things were put in when we did our regular supplies and equipment. Is that making any sense to anyone other than
Yeah,
me?
but I'm sure there will be questions.
Oh. I'd be disappointed if Tom and Judy were the only ones getting questions, but I could live with it.
But we're gonna hold them. We're gonna keep, anything else to report on that, Dr. Bond?
Okay, I have three very brief topics that I just want to go over with you. Early intervention, I'm on page 22 of your packet. Art is going to be talking to you about his transportation budget tomorrow or Thursday, whenever that is. And I just wanted to bring to your attention early intervention, because that plays a big role in the IU transportation budget. I believe it was 2 years ago, we had quite a scare here because we thought we were going to have to assume this early intervention program. And for those of you who have been around, you've heard that discussion. What I wanted to detail for you is the number of students that have been involved in this 3 to 5 year old program who have transitioned into the North Penn School District. And if you take a look and you look at the 91-92 school year, you see we were only at 11. Right now, we're at 51, so we continue to grow, and this will continue to have an impact on the transportation budget. So just wanted you to see those figures and have some background about early intervention. To my knowledge, the program still will remain status quo with the intermediate unit. The money for the actual programming is being funneled still to them, but we absorb the transportation costs. Okay? The next item I wanted to talk to you about is on page 24, and this is occupational and physical therapy services. And bringing this to your attention, this is not something that we usually have on the agenda for budget, But I wanted to give you a historical perspective for occupational therapy and physical therapy costs. Each year, I come to you in August and ask you to ratify a contract with Easter Seals to provide this service. And way back in 93, 94, you could see the budget was at $58,000. And if you just take a quick look down that column, you can see how that has grown. We're at $100,000 for this contract now, and that's as of today. I do not know that by the time we reach August, I will not be coming forward with a $110,000 contract. I want the board to consider strongly allowing me to hire our own people for occupational and physical therapy. I think we can do it. At a lesser cost. And at the point we are now, it's really getting to be problematic because we're servicing so many students. If I wasn't so concerned about this and see this as a potential problem, I would not be bringing this forward to you. But I think at $100,000, I've spoken to you many times about returning programs, and this is one I really think we need to consider bringing back. That would be for one occupational therapist and one physical therapist. We would hire 2 people. Just something for your consideration, because I really do believe that $100,000 will not remain at that number, that we're going to be talking about $120,000 come August.
Judy, what time?
Oh, you want to wait?
Do you
Right.
want to, just let me get to the next item real quickly.
Just jot notes and we'll come
Okay.
back.
The next item is on page 25, and briefly, I just want to mention to you, each year, this is another area that I come forward with a contract, and it's for Montgomery County IU. We service most of the students who have special needs in the school district, but for about 30 students who need certain types of programming, we do not provide that here, and we look to the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit to provide the service for us. Years ago, we just did this with a gentleman's agreement, but when they changed the funding sources and how districts received money, we had to go to a contract in '92 with the Montgomery County IU. Their board needs to ratify this at the end of the month. So I'm bringing this forward to you. It will appear on the agenda. These students all need this program, and it's a yearly routine item. I had originally budgeted for $880,000. When the cost plan came into me, I saw it was significantly less. I left a little bit of money in there as wiggle room in case we get a student or 2 over the summer for which I have to provide a specialized program. Okay. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Now we're back. Let's start over on this side with questions. Start with Mrs. Sherr.
Out of everything that's there, I'm going to have to ask some questions regarding the reading recovery report. You talked about a 73% discontinuation rate. Could you just explain that a little bit for those of us who aren't quite sure of the full meaning of that?
Right, what the discontinuation rate is, it means that the students have worked up to the level where they are considered proficient in reading at their level, and that they can be discontinued from the program, and then someone else could indeed take over their spot throughout the course of the year.
Okay, what happens to the other 26% who don't reach that level of proficiency? And particularly since this program isn't ongoing, it's a first grade only program. There is no second grade reading recovery as far as I know.
That is
Or
correct.
third grade, so I mean,
There's
you either
not a-
graduate or you drop off a cliff, or you go to reading specialists, or.
Well, there are other reading support services then that can help pick that up afterwards in the ensuing years.
Okay, there's no budget attached to this. It used to be outlined. I'd like to see it placed back so that it's maintained as ISS and other special programs maintain their own line on the budget process, so we can understand the different reading specialty programs that are in the budget as opposed to the instructional staff, and of course, who are also involved in teaching reading as a part of the standard classroom curriculum. But Tom, if I understand this correctly, you have 89 children throughout the program
Currently, yes.
that's enrolled, with a 65 that you see is successful and a discontinuation rate. That equates with 14 staff members to 6.3 students for tutoring per year. And I guess that's where the concerns are. It isn't whether or not a child's going to benefit from one-on-one tutoring or in small groups of 2 or 3. There isn't a child out there that doesn't gain something through that. At the last budget, since we don't have hard numbers here, the best I can see is approximately $500,000 involved in the tutoring services for those 89 students.
The whole idea behind a program like Reading Recovery, though, is that it keeps the children from then moving, as Mrs. Clark said, into special education programs possibly, which could then be an ongoing cost which stays with the school district for a very long period of time. So yes, I agree there is a very high initial cost with Reading Recovery, but it's the benefits over the years that really pay off in the long run.
Well, first grade, I haven't gone through 2 of the first graders as far as reading. One that seemed a little quicker than the others. It's a little hard to tell where they're going to land as far as the first grade level is concerned. I mean, you can have someone at that young an age, they can be very slow, and you might say, oh my gosh, they're never going to learn how to read. It's like when you're waiting for them to talk at age 2, and then they become real chatterboxes. It's a little hard necessarily to get a real handle on them at age 1, at grade 1 for, what you can consider extreme reading difficulties, because they're just really reaching at the level where most children advance. Generally, first grade is your major learning year for reading to begin with.
Right.
How do you judge that they can't read at the beginning of the school year?
Well, there are measures that we can use, and having taught first grade for 3 years, there are ways that you can see that there are children who are experiencing trouble. You can see that there are children who are not moving along with the others, who are not moving as quickly as the others are moving. Okay, and the idea is for any early intervention program is to try to get those children to have that good start right from the get-go. Even if we have to help push them and kickstart them a little bit, that's the whole idea behind a program like Reading Recovery. There's been lots of research in it, and we have asked Carol Tarozzi to be here. She has a lot more of that background information than I certainly have, and we can, she's prepared to come up and help answer some of these questions if we have some questions that maybe she could answer. But again, the whole idea behind any early intervention program is to really push to get those children up to snuff to where they should be, so that indeed you're not constantly having somebody who's a year behind and lagging and you never quite get caught up again. That's why the early interventions happen at the first grade level.
I just have a hard time, except in extreme cases, how you'd be able to necessarily reach that identification at such an early point in the learning stages. But I guess as it moves forward, when we had this discussion before, I had asked that such things as an assessment of the actual case scheduling for the employees that are involved, because again, we are not talking full-fledged teaching. They're not in charge with the students for 7 hours a day. A ratio of 6.3 students per year is just a remarkable level of staffing per student when you're dealing with 30-minute, 40-minute sessions that happen.
The one thing you have to realize with them is they only do Reading Recovery for part of the day. Okay, then that's the morning, okay, for half time. So half of their time is dealing with that. And then they switch over and do other kinds of group work in the afternoon as a reading support teacher or something along those lines, okay?
Well,
so in the course of the day, those teachers are seeing more than just, say, 4 to 6 children or something like that in that period of time. They're seeing other children in group settings in the afternoon.
But separated from the Reading Recovery and the Reading Recovery budget, which is talking about a $6,000 per pupil cost factor for tutoring. And as of last year's numbers, I'm just pulling out if you've reached any better efficiency rate. I had it close to $8,000 when I got the actual budget versus those that actually successfully stayed with and graduated from the program, which is dealing with your 65 students. I mean, then we're approaching $8,000. Oh my goodness, that's on top of the regular classroom commitment that's made, where the teacher is teaching them to read. It's also a pull-out program. I'd like to know, how do we work it so that they're not missing and becoming behind in the course of study that's being taught while they're pulled out for reading?
Well, they never pull a child out without collaboration with the classroom teacher. And that certainly is taken into account, so that what they are missing is not more important than the reading instruction that they're getting at that point in time.
Yeah, because reading's going on throughout the
Yeah,
classroom.
so that's not just an arbitrary schedule that's made up by the reading recovery teacher. And that, as I alluded to earlier, or discussed earlier, there's a lot of collaboration between the reading recovery teacher and the regular first grade classroom teachers.
I guess my final comment, Tom Landry, I wonder why we're just only specifically discussing reading recovery. It would seem to me that we should be looking at an evaluation of what the overall supplemental reading curriculum involves. I'm asking Dennis if he would update the sheets that we had last year and at the budget time. At that time, I had a total of 37.5 employees involved in the specific discipline of reading. Chapter 1, reading recovery, reading support, reading specialists, and other reading specialists. It basically came to a total of $2.5 million, and I know it grew because there were 2 additional reading recovery employees added subsequent to this discussion. This is over and above the classroom teaching time and staff time in which reading's a part of our discipline. And my daughter isn't involved in any of the specialized programs, but I know that there's considerable time during class day. There's that super silent reading that's also incorporated as a part of the day. And I don't want reading recovery to become the only focus of this discussion. I guess what we have to see is, do we know where we're going? And how efficient is this system proving itself to be? Is there an assessment out there that gives us those assurances? At $6,000, if you look at just the total entered in, if you look at beyond that at $8,000 per student to be tutored, my gosh, there's Sylvan Learning Center, there's Germantown Academy for a full education. And
where do you want to take the conversation? Do you want Dennis to come back breaking apart where our
I think we should have a full evaluation so that we can get a full picture on what the reading staff is as it stands right now and as it's being proposed.
Well, I think that, and I mentioned that we are going to need Tuesday night to recap and to rehash, for lack of better words, as a board. I think we need to throw our questions and our concerns out, and I don't know that we'll get to a Thursday night, but this will be one topic that we will come back and revisit on Tuesday night.
I mean, the thing is, you're a Grinch. I mean, you're against reading? Well, excuse me, no one's against reading, but is this the best, most efficient use of our resources? And why is it that we can only service so few students for so many dollars in teaching them to read? When you can go out on the private market and you can find far greater better economies than this, and
well, again, tonight's the night for questions, and I'll go ahead and say it, on Tuesday night, this board's gonna have to decide, is this an area that we're gonna look to keep or look to revise, whatever. But let's get our questions out tonight, and we're not gonna come to any conclusion tonight, that's for sure.
I think there should be, if there's any suggestions out there within our reading specialists as far as altering the implementation so that it can become more efficient, then certainly I think that would be appropriate for them to bring forward suggestions that they have to where we can find that the cost per pupil cost for this isn't actually exceeding our actual basic education program for our elementary students with full service. If you know what I mean.
We'll work with Dennis on that. Other questions? Comments? Okay, David?
I'm sorry.
Let me start where presentation started. With the MISE program, Tom, I think you mentioned that originally we had budgeted about $220,000.
That's what we knew the MISE Institute was going to be giving us.
Okay.
That was the commitment that they had made early on.
In regards to trying to make sure that we keep up our commitment with the new things that I think we've identified, and the fact that we could look to a matching grant, if you will, of $400,000, does that mean we'll have an increase in what we have to budget to be able to acquire those additional funds?
Well, some of the things that might happen is, like some of the things that ended up being taken out already could indeed come back in. There could be some, staff development monies that were put back in or something along those lines. Dr. Paravano is going to meet with Donna and Dave and I next Thursday.
So this is still an evolving picture of things that we could be adding in order to qualify for the matching grants.
We could be adding, but anything that we would be adding at this time would be at no cost to the district, because it would be under the money, under this $400,000. Okay? Because what I'm saying is that the things that are in there for $351,000, our commitment is already in the budget.
For that amount?
For that amount. So therefore, anything that MISE is now giving us and anything that we add into the budget is now icing on the cake, because MISE just came up with almost another $180,000 for us.
That amount of money was in the budget, and they have now agreed to match funds or to qualify us for funds that we previously not asked for.
Previously, we were holding a much bigger, it was a 63-37 split, with us picking up 63%, and what they've done is they've helped equalize that now.
Okay. The next topic was the reading recovery program, and my only comments there, in light of Mrs. Scher's comments, is that it continues to amaze me that we always look to review the entire reading program every year at the budget time. It is not the right time to do it. We do have a strategic planning effort in place for the reading program, and a review to look for efficiencies at this time just never seems appropriate, and it seems to come up every single year. And I think the last thing that I wanted to ask about was the request to bring the occupational physical therapist in-house. Do we have a break-even picture on what that would be for us to make that consideration? I understand the budget is $100,000. Is that, what kind of staffing does Easter Seals provide us for that $100,000?
They provide us with 2 people right now. And the service that we're getting from them, although we have been happy over the years with it, it just is getting difficult for them to continue to provide the level of service that we need.
Okay.
Okay.
And
with our own people and the different, they're not here every single day for the entire day.
Okay.
We do it on an hourly rate that we're paying them $50 an hour, and the level of service, you see 140 students under occupational therapy, but each of those students could require 2 contacts, 1 contact a week. It depends totally on what their specially designed instruction is according to their IEP. So what I'm saying is it would be a better utilization of time if we own those people ourselves. We would be able to manage the program even better than we're currently doing.
Okay, so is there a possibility that we could at least maintain that cost or reduce that cost and improve service?
I would be looking to reduce it slightly and improve service. And over time, we would see more cost effectiveness than in the first year.
Thank you. That's the end of my questions.
Mrs. Clark, when are you going to bring that, regarding these therapists and so forth, to us, that evaluation?
I would like the board to consider this, and I would like it to be approved finally in the end budget.
Okay. So in the near future. Regarding reading recovery, I also like to know the exact cost per student. Also, if there's any other alternatives that we could pursue that will do the same result at a less expensive price. Otherwise, no other comments.
Good, thanks. Ms. Mabel?
Sure, thank you, Mr. President. When I received this budget presentation for this evening and looked through it quickly, I realized that every single category, with the exception of reading recovery, has a dollar amount attached. So when I see something that comes before the board and it doesn't have the dollars attached to it, not only is that a bad sign, it's a red flag, and it should never have been here without the dollars. It should not even be up for discussion without the dollars, because I believe this board made a decision, I guess back in December, January, that no longer will we theorize, approve, and then back into a payment plan ever again. Sure, there's some history here, and at least those history dollars should have been made available tonight. But I am having a problem justifying with closing in on 13,000 students next year, that 89 children would receive such a grand amount of additional monies to be placed to their educational plan for the day. I think the numbers, those per pupil costs that were requested of you, Mr. Kelly, are important not only for that reading recovery portion of their tutorial service for the day, but also the impact they have on the overall budget and their per pupil costs.
That's correct, Ms. Mingle. Mrs. Scher shared with me what I had given to the board last year and has asked me at the break, she asked me to update it so that you have the same information for this year that you had for last year, and I will do that for you.
As well as any projected changes forward in the new budget. Give us exactly what the actuals are that you have, that you can glean for this year. I know it's hard. You gotta understand, these things aren't even separate. This isn't a separate line item. There's no tracking of it.
Well, I see that it's labor intensive, it's costly, it's 89 children, almost 13,000 kids here, and where does it stop when it comes to this? Is this not something that a parent should pick up and do on their own? A lot of us use tutors and hire tutoring services or seek the volunteer of friends or teachers that we know, family members that we know to pick up in these areas where our children are weak. This might be an area that belongs to the parents and not to the school district. And where does it stop? If it's not reading recovery, is it math recovery? You're going to have science recovery, social studies recovery. Where does the recovery stop? So I'm really worried about it, and I want to see the numbers in the event that I might be getting too hysterical.
I understand that you want to see the numbers, and certainly Tom and I can work together with Carol to provide them. But one thing I really want you to consider, and I feel some responsibility to say this. Reading Recovery is a regular education program. I'm looking at it from a totally different perspective. We have a $10 million budget for special education in this school district. Special education is costly. Any inappropriate placements end up costing us a lot of money. And although you may look at it and say there are 89 students, in my mind, if 10 of those students get the help they need, and we are not compounding that an inappropriate helping of that child through special education, we are saving money in this school district. And I think that's an important perspective to have. Because we have had traditionally students receiving some special education services because there's nothing else for them, and we are not meeting their needs early on. And I think with early intervention and the things that you're going to see happening at the state level, we are going to continue to get more and more of these children that need a type of program like this. So it's just something I want you to consider, looking at it from both ends, a regular ed aspect and a special education aspect.
Well, I did pick up your message about it being preventative, and that's a goodly and a godly thing. At the same time, I look at probably under your leadership, when you brought T1 in here, when you look at the great economy in taking, that's a preventative program that you brought forward.
That's a regular
You have how many
education
kids
program.
with one teacher? It's all day long. Yeah, it is regular ed, but it's also preventative in nature and was designed to be that way. And I just see such more children making a greater use of less money. Plus, I admittedly am suspect that there's no numbers here. That's just not good. I guess to the OTPTs, Judy, currently those therapies are being done here on our properties anyway, or these kids go out?
No, they're here on our property, and it's part of their individual educational plan. It's a related service that's defined by law that we have to provide.
So you're not looking for space, equipment, you don't have any of these additional needs that's already here?
We already have it. We have purchased tremendous equipment over the years for use with the students. This is for the personnel.
This is personnel. My concern is, as you look at the OTPT needs, you're saying one of each, Are you looking at these being bargaining unit folks, or are these administrators, or are they contracted
I would-
employees? What are they?
I would assume that they will fall under the bargaining unit.
Well, then that scares me, because $100,000, what are we gonna get? Somebody in here, get 3 of them for 32,000, or are we gonna get, the average being here, what, 52,000, and then the benefits and all that?
Well, I'm telling you that the long range, and if you look at this long range, this number is going to continue to escalate, and it's going to be costing us more to contract out than to have our own. And I have brought forward many programs where we get to this point where I'm telling you that it's going to become a nightmare if we continue to have to contract out for this. We're just getting too large, and we're continuing to grow. Many of these students have come to us through early intervention. They have already had OT and PT before they even walk in our door. And, you look at it, it's either bite the bullet now, or we're going to have to look at this later on.
Why do these have to be bargaining unit people? Why can't they be independent operators with licenses? Can they service contractors of our own?
I can take a look at that.
Concerned about the budgets and all the other extrapolating, then we're tied up with them too over contractual disputes.
I will look to see if there's a creative way around this.
I see, though, that you wish to squeeze more time out of people that you already have. Even if they ended up being in the
Absolutely.
bargaining unit, you could squeeze more time out of these people. Do you currently, the times that we have on this hourly, does that include the travel time for the people to get here and back?
Yes. So we're not at this point getting the level of service that we really need to accommodate all of these students. And I don't see the picture changing down the road. I only see us getting more and more
So you
students.
immediately gain their travel time because they're here this
Right,
night?
right. And plus, we're paying them $50 an hour per student. So you have to look at that too.
Judy, I trust you very much. You've always come forward with creative ideas in this special ed area, and I admire what you do, and I feel the more of these students that you can bring here and service here, the better. And you've been, almost every year, there's a new group coming back, and that's been under your leadership, and I admire you for that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Ms. Krieger.
Okay, Judy, on the occupational and physical therapy positions that you're asking us for, I just have one question in regards to the IU positions that were listed for occupational therapy and physical therapy. Those two positions, I'm assuming, are positions that we are going to rely upon, that we're being asked to pay for?
The occupational therapists and the physical therapists that the IU hires are people that service the students that are in their programs. And many of our students, I would say most of our students that we contract out for services that are physically handicapped or multi-handicapped also have occupational and physical therapy as part of their IEPs. When we pay for a child to go to Montgomery County, it's for the total program. We do not use the Easter Seal people to go down there and service those children. We use the people they have on staff because it's an integrated model.
Okay, so these are children that are going to the IU.
They are going to the intermediate unit. We have about 22.
And the positions that you're advocating to hire are for
In-house, for children that
in-house.
exist here in the North Penn School District.
Okay. In regards to the MICE program, Dr. Sugar, I may be I may be confused about something. I sat in the audience last year and heard the presentation by Dr.
Paravana.
I'm sorry, I cannot say his name.
Paravana.
And he explained that evening that the MICE grant, from that point on, the North Penn School District was going to be required to come up with a greater portion of the funding. And if you look at this graph on page 18, I mean, you can see that North Penn started off paying a minimal amount and is now almost at matching funds to what MICE is giving us. And it is my understanding that as we continue, I may be wrong, so please correct me if I am, that we are going to be called upon in our future budgets to come up with greater percentages in funding. Am I correct, or? Because that's not what you said.
The funds will change. Okay, I didn't discuss the future.
No, but.
I didn't discuss the future.
No, but what you said was in the past, we were called upon to make a greater contribution than than the MICE people, and I don't think that's what you meant, but that is what you said.
I don't think that's what I said. I don't know.
Well, that's what I heard.
Okay.
I just
But
wanted to clarify that because it's in the future that we're going to have to be making a greater contribution.
what I had said was in the past, we did not always put forth some of the things in our MISE budget that was submitted to MISE that we were paying for anyway, that could be,
Okay,
certainly could be put underneath that umbrella.
okay.
So there were supplies and things that we are now putting in there that we have bought for the last
Okay.
3 or 4 years that we never put in that budget because we didn't, they're regular supplies that we would have used anyway, and other school districts were counting those supplies. We thought, well, that's just something we've always used, so we are now putting some of those things in there.
How much
Now,
is that, do you know, Van?
I don't know if Dave or Donna, that's a real.
Well, of the 700.
Because again, it's in many different,
Sure.
it's in many
I
different
mean, is it like
accounts.
$50,000 or, I mean, is it that much, you know?
It's probably more than that.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Dr. Sugar, of the $751,000 that we're slated to get for 96-97, what I'd like you to come back with before, you don't have to do it now, but before we make our final recommendations for the preliminary budget, I would be interested to know how much of this goes for staff development, how much of it goes for extra duty or extracurricular pay, or, you know, extra pay for our staff, for conferences and things that they may be asked to attend on behalf of this grant, of this participation program. And also of the $35,000 for technology, I would like to know specifically how that's going to be implemented into the elementary curriculum. And I think that was the
So you want to break down of the categories of how the money is going to be spent?
Yes, please.
And just realize
I'd like it itemized.
that we've been working on that with Dr. Paravano. As I said earlier, some of this just changed this morning.
Okay, that's
and
fine.
so
As long
we'll
as
get
I
that
have
for
a
you.
better itemization before we're asked to approve it. Okay, now finally, with the reading recovery program, I too would like to see a detailed budget analysis on this program. Lots of numbers have been going around this evening, and I personally would like to have a more accurate figure in regards to the total expense of this program, in particular to salaries. And I'll tell you why, Dr. Sugar. When this, I was also sitting out in the audience when a presentation was made to a previous board in regards to the implementation of reading recovery. It was during that conversation or presentation, it was stated very clearly that this program, one individual was going to be hired to go away, to be trained, to come back and to train North Penn School District staff, in particular the reading specialists, to implement the reading recovery program. 2-3 years later, we now have 14 more employees that we are paying for this particular service. I look at letters that have been distributed in this community over the last week from our reading specialists, our reading support specialists, reading recovery specialists. There's also letters that have been distributed from learning support specialists. I frankly believe, as some of the other board members have indicated, with all the specialists that we have dealing with our reading programs and our children who may need extra help, it's apparent to me that some of the reading specialists in the building, for the numbers that they have to deal with on an annual basis, could do this program. I would like to know why they cannot do this program, and I would like an explanation at some point before we approve the preliminary budget as to where and how that came about and why that changed. And Mr. White is correct. Tonight is not the night to debate the level of remediation in first grade. However, I do have concerns about that. I'm also aware that in the very near future, this board is going to receive a presentation on the findings and recommendations by the Reading Review Curriculum Committee that has been meeting over the last year. I think it's a year and a half. that is the time for this board to take a very good look at the reading programs that we here in the North Penn School District are presenting our children. Because I do find it very questionable that we have such a great rate of remediation in the first grade. And I believe if we were doing a better job through the curriculum we were providing our children, beginning in kindergarten and first grade, that we would see a decline in the numbers of children who would need to be remediated, especially in the first grade. So that's all that's just how I believe, and it's your job to come back and tell me how I'm wrong if I am wrong. And it's the job of the Reading Review Curriculum Committee to come and make recommendations to this board that counteract that position. But as in regards to the budget, and in particular with reading recovery, I would like to see a detailed analysis on that. And I would also like to see a detailed analysis on the other individual budgets in regards to our reading specialist programs, the reading specialists, learning support. You might as well throw it all.
When you're saying a
This is
detailed
curriculum.
analysis, what are you looking at? You're
I wanna
looking
know
at their
exactly
salaries?
if everybody's lumped together salary-wise,
Mhm.
and everything's lumped together program-wise, I would like to see it separated out. How much are we spending for salaries for reading recovery? How much are we spending for training? How much are we spending for staff development? How much are we spending for the actual supplies for the program? There's got to be some justification at this point forward in this district for the expenses that we are being asked to make. And that has not been asked for in the past, and I think the time is now. And I'd like, the same for the reading specialist budget. We have quite a few reading specialists in this district, and I'd like to know the number of children that they are serving. I've seen numerous letters come through this district this week to parents in this district that have caused great concern and have served to stir up much fear in the minds of many parents who have children in learning support and their children, the special ed children, Judy, correct me if I'm wrong, those services that we provide, for the most part, are mandated.
They are mandated.
This board cannot change those
No.
services. And I find it very, very disturbing that some of the activities that have taken place this week by some of our employees have served to cause such great concern in the parents in this district. I think it's most unfortunate. But with that justification, Dr. Sugar, I think we can clear up a lot of the misconceptions that have been going on in regards to the programs and this particular board's intention.
I'll get that information for you.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Allen?
Can I defer for a minute?
Pat?
Go ahead, Pat.
Bill, Mr. Allen?
Take my time.
Just a couple of things. I noticed, I'll do what David did. I'll start with the first presentation on the Merck partnership. I noticed last year we spent $400,000, not just us, the combination of the two. This year expenditure looks to be somewhere around $750,000.
Correct.
Why did it almost double? Why are we spending $350,000 more than we did last year?
As I tried to explain before, what we've done this time is we have really incorporated costs that we have always borne in there, which really made a jump, as well as we're still adding new kits and equipment and replenishing kits that we have as we move towards the hands-on experiences that we're moving towards in science. But again, we're including costs in there that didn't show up before.
No, I'm not asking that, Dr. Sugar. What I'm asking is that the total program last year was $400,000. The total program this year is $750,000. Why are we and Merck together spending $350,000 more this year than we did last year? I understand that we're going to get more reimbursement because there were the other participating districts were including things we weren't including, so consequently, we're going to get a greater contribution from Merck. I understand that point. What I'm saying is, what has happened that we're going to spend $350,000 more this year for this program than we did last year? We hiring more teachers? We buying more equipment? Or
Maybe I need some help here.
We're not actually spending $350,000 more. A goodly portion of that $350,000 is money we already spent. Last year, we did not account for that because Merck had asked us not to put that in the budget, which is a lot of that middle school funding.
Okay.
Also concomitant with this budget, proposed budget for next year, is the fact that we are increasing the number of kits that we are providing at each grade level. And initially, we started with only 4 schools and with a very partial implementation. So that's where that jump comes in. At some point, we will level off. And in fact, as we sustain the program, we'll really engage in a decrease.
Well, Dr. Brown, how many more schools are we adding to it this year?
We are in now all 13 elementary schools at all grade levels. Last year, we were in all 13 schools, but we did not service all grade levels at that time.
What grade levels did we service last year?
Well, we did serve K through 6, but not in every area. And we did not include learning support, which we now include.
So just by expanding the program, it's going to cost almost twice as much.
No.
You know.
Expanding the program is not going to cost twice as much. Expanding the program is probably going to cost maybe a third as much. A goodly portion of what is in there, as Dr. Sugar has already explained, is what was already in the budget in the past for middle school, but we are now putting in so that we can leverage more funding from the Merck Institute.
Okay.
Because basically, for every $47 we're spending, we're getting 53 in.
Okay, now one more thing. Dr. Sugar said he did not want to look into the future. Perhaps you can for us. Right now, the percentage breakdown is 55-45. This is, he did say this is going to change.
Right. Partnership.
I see our contribution becoming greater and theirs becoming less.
And you have to expect that. The Merck Institute has made a commitment to us for a 10-year period. And we are now getting closer to that halfway mark. And naturally, in a partnership, you expect a virtually 50-50 type of funding. At some point, the bird will fly the nest, and we will be taking over. But we will be taking over a program that the two of us have built together based upon this 50-50 type funding. And when we reach that stage, we will be virtually at a maintenance level. We will not be adding a program as we are right now.
So you're saying at some point in time the program should not be costing us $750,000, $800,000?
That is correct. We will be working at a maintenance level.
Thank you. That's all I had on that. Thank you. In regards to reading recovery, I too am concerned that a program is brought forth and we don't have the financials. And also last year, I remember attending the budget meetings, and I also saw a graph that was submitted showing what children did in different grade levels. And I don't know if that can be done, but I would like to see what happens when a child moves along and gets out of the reading recovery program and gets into 5th and 6th and 7th grade. Does this program benefit him that his reading does increase? Because last year, the charts that I saw, it could be, I don't have it in front of me, but I think 5th grade we had, somewhere in 1st grade, we had something like 4% of the children that had a reading problem. By the time we got to 5th grade, it was something like 28 or 31% had a reading problem. And 6th grade, it was, like I said, could be 28 was 5th grade and 31% was 6th grade, or vice versa. But it seemed to me that you went from 4% and the numbers seemed to be increasing as we were going through higher grades. I don't understand how that's a successful program.
One thing you have to realize, this is only the 3rd year of reading recovery. Therefore, any children who are at those upper levels in 6th grade haven't certainly had any services such as reading recovery. So, you know, we've only had this in our schools for 2 years, last year and this year. So any studies you're looking at there, don't really look at our reading recovery program, because our reading recovery program, children are only in second grade if they were in it in first grade. Okay, so you can't look at that, because we haven't had the program long enough to have any longitudinal data from our own studies. I know there have been many studies done on reading recovery that show very, very good results. Okay, our data isn't certainly conclusive because we haven't been doing it long enough.
Well, you should have some sort of a handle now on kids that are second, third grade that went through the program, shouldn't you?
Only in second grade.
Second
because
grade? Okay.
you know, the children who, nobody's gotten to third grade yet.
Okay.
We're only in
Perhaps
second grade.
what's in order, you know, for maybe this year or for even next year or down the road, and I think it is a part of the reading recovery. You'll find it in the packet of information you received tonight, Mr. Mosey. It does specifically state that there needs to be a form of assessment made.
Right.
In regards to the program, which obviously you just told us, there is no form of assessment on our current reading recovery program and how it relates to the upper grades. We've only had it for 2 years. So, you know, if there is.
Can you help out, Carol? And what I'm.
If there is a form of assessment, it needs to be presented to the board,
But,
is what
okay,
I'm saying.
all right, but all I'm saying is we can't assess 5th and 6th graders based on reading recovery at this point in time.
No, I think Mr. Mosey understands that, since this is only a 2-year program in place, but there should be some kind of an assessment made with the children who have been discontinued as they move through the process.
Okay. Carol, can you address that for me, please?
First of all, there is an assessment on every reading recovery child that is done several times throughout the year in first grade. It's a 6-part assessment before they're discontinued that shows that they can function successfully in their classroom. All of that data is collected and an annual report is prepared by Susan Durstein. Every single year the statistics are gathered. This year we recognized that we had a group of second graders who were discontinued, and we are in the process of assessing those second graders so we can see the progress that they have made. At the same time, we're also in the process of assessing a random sample of second graders in the classroom so we can compare the progress of those children to discontinued reading recovery children. So we are doing that kind of assessment.
Okay, that's good. And when will we have those results, Dr. Teruzzi?
The results on that will not occur until the end of May. We have the results on the second graders that were discontinued. We do not have the random sample second graders, though, and that will not occur until the end of May at this point.
Will they be made available to the board during your recommendations of the reading language arts curriculum review?
That assessment piece was not scheduled to be part of it. If that's something you would like to see, I would include it.
Is reading recovery part of the review?
No, we are including the entire reading language arts program K-12. Specifically, it's looking at a very broad spectrum. We can include the data from reading recovery if that would be your request.
I would like to see a separate assessment on reading recovery. I don't know about the rest of the board members, but I would like to see a separate assessment.
Mr. Mosey, do you mean as apart from that meeting in June? Is that what you're asking for?
Yes, please.
I have a question for Carol Thomas.
I'm not finished, Vicki, just a moment, please.
That's all right.
Well, okay, if you want to ask Carol a question, because my next question is for Mrs.
Right, it was because Carol's
Go ahead.
up there,
Go
and
ahead.
since you've got.
Take 2 minutes of my time.
I apologize. You can steal them
You're
back
fine.
from me later. Carol, I'd like to just ask you, what percentage of first grade students or graduating kindergarten students are proficient readers?
Of first grade students?
As of September, when we start our school year, how many of those are proficient readers?
Not many of them are proficient readers at that point. However, there are many indicators of those who are going to be proficient readers as opposed to those who are going to have problems. Some of the children come to us reading already. Certainly those would be considered proficient readers. Many of them have all of the pieces in place that they are ready and can learn in a very appropriate fashion. There are those who don't have those pieces in place.
I would like to see those indicators because I'd be concerned that, you know, as I recall my children beginning first grade, I don't think you could have predicted their abilities to read as of September for that school year. I mean, it's not as though they've gone through a year of a concentrated effort on reading. That doesn't happen in half-day kindergarten.
But there
And
are,
I guess that's where I have a hard time that we can make statements regarding how these children could become special ed classified students, therefore creating all these expenses. I'd like to see the indicators, because I like to see whether my children might have fit that classification, even though they've become rather successful.
you're asking for those measures that we look at, by
Right.
which we select the students that we.
What sets off the red flags
I will
when
share
you're
this.
dealing with a 5.5, 6-year-old student? And I guess also, just as it relates to what the testing for identification, that such a small percentage of our students are designated for this service above the services of the, as apart from the reading specialist services or the report reading support services, which are all there for remedial reading and enrichment purposes.
Mrs. Scher, the children who are designated for the reading recovery are taken from the bottom 20% in first grade. We get the recommendations from kindergarten teachers, and then we get recommendations from first graders. So we're looking at the very bottom 20% of the children in first grade. From that, after we assess them, we select those children who are at the bottom of the bottom in first grade.
At the bottom?
At the bottom, within that 20%. When we are at full implementation, we can get a larger number of children in that 20%, but we begin with the very bottom, those children who have the least number of pieces of information that they can put together to help them learn to read.
Okay, well, perhaps when I see those indicators, then I'll be able to see what could give you that kind of comfort for determination of that as to ability versus just lack of exposure.
We don't include ability in this. That's not something that we look at. All children have these services available to them. But I will gladly prepare that for you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Pat?
Back to Pat.
Thank you. I just want to ask, Mrs. Clark, you mentioned that you're concerned about children who have a problem, they move into special ed, and perhaps they shouldn't because, do you have a number? Now, the program's in the second year. Can you tell us?
I do.
What concerned me was you said that we have 89 children in a program.
Right.
And 10 is successful, then you consider that a successful program. And I'm saying we're still going to put 79 kids in the special ed.
No. I said if 10 of those students, if it doesn't result in an inappropriate placement in special education.
Right.
If 10 of those students get the proper help through reading recovery, so that I'm not looking at them long-term in special education for a corrective reading problem as opposed to a processing problem, then we have saved money in the school district because of the cost of special education. It's something that we constantly look to refine our placement process and to make sure that the percentage of students that we service, that we're using appropriate instruments and that it's not just a garden variety problem that could be solved by a different type of remediation than going into special education, which really should be the last resort for students. Not as just a remedial program for students. It's specialized instruction. And the cost of special education is very, very expensive.
I know it is. I see the budget. I know it is. $10 million is a lot of money. But I guess my question is, if we have 89 kids and 73% of them discontinue the program, I'm assuming we're saying that 73% of the kids have successfully completed the program and now can move on. That is a fact. We have 73% of these 89 children are going to, or you're projecting. We don't have the actual numbers yet. Okay. Okay, thank you. And then the other question I had, not a question, but a comment. You are very creative, and I do appreciate that as a board member. And I, like Donna, have a lot of confidence in you. I, like her, have reservations about hiring someone and making them part of the bargaining unit.
I will see if there's something
I can
we can do.
appreciate your concerns, but I can also see where this $100,000 figure could escalate just as quickly as if we stayed with the Easter Seals people. So I agree with you. I think we should do something, and I guess I'm imploring you to try to be creative and come up with something to help us out of this dilemma, because I would like to have them on site. We could get more services out of them. I agree with Mrs. Mengel, we could get more services out of them. But I'm concerned that if we make them part of the bargaining unit, it's going to create a problem, and I can see those salaries escalating just as quickly. Thank you, Mr. President. That's all I have.
Let's come back to Mr. Allen.
A lot of the questions have been answered. One of the things that Pat brought up was, one of the things that I remember was what seemed to be the increase in number of children as a percentage of the grade level that were reading below, I'm not sure what we call it, whether it was below average or not proficient enough to go on. And I'm wondering, is any of that, or is all of that, or is most of that due to people coming into the district? In other words, is there any way of us knowing, is that first graders and second graders that have deteriorated in their skills, or are we looking at, because of our growth here, of new children coming in and starting in the 6th grade that weren't up to our level and pulling scores? Do we have any feel for that, or is that just guesswork?
Probably a combination of many things. I'm certainly not going, that would be the easy way out to say, yeah, it's all the children who moved in. Or but
our kids are great.
But I'm not going to say that, because no, I can't say that.
Okay, we don't know, right?
I mean, yes, it's really a combination of many things, and you know, reading it is a very difficult process, and we all know that many people rise to different levels in reading, and it's always been that way. Okay, we're working very hard to optimize the reading performance, because we realize that reading is used across the board in all subject areas. So it certainly is the most important thing that we teach, and that's why at the early intervention level we give it so much credence, because it is so very, very important.
Well, I guess I made this speech last year at the same time, but I do believe it's the most important thing we do, is teaching first graders how to read, because without that, there's not much else they can do. I would like to see the results of the evaluation of the program. I don't want to do it just because it sounds good, but I'd like to support it. I'd like to keep it going. I think one thing that we forget to realize when everybody's looking for cost benefit, that if there's a problem child in anybody's classroom, whether it be behavioral or a severe reading problem, that if that student is taken out and helped, it allows the teacher to devote time to the rest of the students in the classroom. And I look at our reading specialists. They may handle individually a couple students on a daily basis, but they also help the individual teachers teach reading. So you can't just say how many students does that reading teacher have contact with on a daily basis. If he's helping the regular teacher teach reading, I think he's benefiting, or that teacher is benefiting all the students. So it's hard to put a cost-benefit analysis on it, I believe. And when it comes to reading, I'd rather err on the side of maybe a little too much than not enough. And I want to get confirmation again. I did have a question about doing the therapy groups in here. You did say it does not require any space because the students are already here.
They're already here.
And we're just bringing in a different teacher,
right,
so to speak, a therapist.
There's space provided in the schools when they're performing that therapy based on whatever it is.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Clemens, can I ask a question that might help the board?
Sure.
Jude, is there a
say, a specific percentage of students that are in special ed historically, a percentage that is in special ed every year? Or does it
Yes.
fluctuate greatly?
No, we track the percentage every single year, and between gifted and handicapped, we have run for the last 5 years between 17 and 18%.
Can you look, if the third graders didn't have reading recovery and the second graders have, can you go back and look and see if there are less numbers of kids in special ed? I don't know, I'm not an educator, but, I mean, is that a way to do it, that could help the board?
That would be
Okay.
very dangerous to do that.
Okay.
Because there's so many other extraneous factors.
I mean, everybody was saying that there's a chance that there'd be more kids. I'm kind of basic. I'm looking at, numbers, and if the
Well, what
numbers
we
fit.
track there, Dennis, is we look and see if we're just identifying children with a remedial problem rather than in need of a specially designed instructional program all the way through. You know, we do.
I didn't mind, I
look at
didn't mean to prolong it. I just thought it was a question that I had.
Along those lines,
Okay,
Judy, isn't the testing comprehensive? I mean, to identify someone for special ed and to be able to say that you might be placing them there because they just don't know how to read well enough, when you consider all the tests that are out there that go not just on knowledge, but on potential, your IQ test, your Woodcock's, I'm like, how could it be just
Keep in mind, Vicki, and I just want to say this one thing quickly. When I work with a psychologist and I work with the different people that do the testing, I want to make sure that we've exhausted everything in regular education and that child has gotten everything they can so that we're pretty well assured when they get placed in special education that that's the treatment that they need. And that's always a question. Are we giving them everything they need and exhausting everything first?
How many other school districts in Montgomery County have this program?
Carol?
Colonial, Wissahickon, Abington, and there are several others that are looking at it that have not yet moved.
I'd like to add on to that question. How serious is, let's say, Souderton or Penridge? Where are they with the program?
Souderton and Penridge are not looking at it currently. It's Colonial, Wissahickon, and Abington
Okay.
that are.
Dennis, I'd like you to call their financial department, and I'd like you to find out what their staff per student ratio as well as financial investment is in this program as they service those students. Thank you.
Okay, how about any other, come back to Mrs. Krieger.
Yeah, this is different. I mean, this is the night for us to ask questions of Mrs. Clark. if
Sure.
There's questions in her department. Okay. I met with Mrs. Clark last week, and on page 41 of the detailed budget, if the board could indulge me for a minute. I'm sorry to the audience if they don't have this, page 41. And Dennis, you're probably the one that's gonna have to come back with the answer to this question. You probably have to get with Judy or Brenda in personnel or human resources to figure this one out. Board members, you will notice a difference of about $50,000 between what we're paying out at the end of this year for our counselors and what is being budgeted for next year. You'll see that the figure for next year is $50,000 less. However, we are not reducing our counseling staff by any position.
Mrs. Krieger, the thought occurred to me, and I should have said something to you earlier. You know the $801,000, that also includes the retroactive pay. You have to remember, all the estimated salaries this year, that was paid July 21st, so that sort of colors that issue. The retro pay is included in the $801,000.
That's all of it, too.
Okay, so
Right,
the actual.
all of it. So you have a 2-year retro pay also
Okay.
included in with the estimated this year.
Yeah, it's confusing. The auditor did
Right,
close
and so
out
that
as of
752
June
up from
30th.
697 has to do with their increases, right?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
But we will look into that for you, but that you will see that situation in any number of personnel that deal with the bargaining unit. All those ASNs, the estimated will be much higher than next year's salary, because you have that 2-year retro in there.
Okay, so then is that the same with the psychologist and everything else that we found the other day, Judy?
Psychologists are bargaining unit members also.
Okay.
Any bargaining unit member.
Okay. And just finally, Mr. Clements, in regards to the memo that we received from Dr. Bond on the extracurricular music positions for the middle schools, the junior highs, would it be more appropriate to talk to him about that on Thursday? since it deals with personnel?
Well, I think we're going to be able to spend quite a bit of time on personnel on Thursday, so
Would it be
we
more
could.
appropriate
I think it would.
Okay.
I think it would.
Would you call me and let me know what that question is? No, I just think you would. Well, how about if I call you and ask you what the question is?
Tom, if we're dealing with the secondary ed, does that mean then everything within the high school, within those school budgets then needed to be tonight? I was sticking to the topics that he basically presented. But we've got,
Well, we'll either cover tonight or we'll cover Thursday night.
we've got additional charges on physicians,
It's getting late. I mean,
physical
it's-
therapists that I don't understand, and also I think we need a discussion on extracurricular expenses in a general sense.
we'll do it Thursday night. It's getting too late.
Yeah.
It's getting late.
Okay.
Any other
Maybe
questions?
I'll forward it on to you
Let's-
in a memo.
Before I open it up to the,
It would be helpful, Tom, if they did have those questions, that I knew what they were before Thursday.
Thursday night, okay, just,
That's only fair.
it is.
Nobody should be bushwhacked. I mean,
Right.
if there's a
Anyway,
chance to get the information.
So what we'll
they can
do
have it.
is, before I open it to the audience of citizens, what we'll do is, we'll conclude tonight our questions. Again, this is time of questions for the board to the administration. Thursday night, we'll handle transportation, and then we will move right into all types of personnel questions, okay? And it'll be a long night Thursday night also. But again, Thursday night will be handled as a question and answer type night. What we'll do then is we will go ahead and for sure schedule a meeting Tuesday night. And Tuesday night is going to be the night then when this board is going to need to really gather consensus on areas where we feel what we can live with, what we can as far as the millage increase. And we will try to really narrow it down Tuesday night to where we want to be. So so we will be ready for the preliminary budget on Thursday night. That's how we'll handle it. Again, Thursday night will be questions and answers again. Thursday night, we won't get into, what can we live with, things like that. It's question and answers on transportation and personnel issues.
And miscellaneous,
So, just so I understand, we're not gonna do part 5 tonight then?
No, we're not. Nope. Okay? Any other questions from the board? Vic?
Tommy, I'd only ask that you add a miscellaneous there for those areas which we didn't touch on. I mean, we really.
That's fine.
you know,
Okay, I'll add
there's some
personnel and
stray
miscellaneous.
questions
Right,
out
right. There are many questions will come up. Like I just went off the top of my head, Dennis, for instance, for that night, it'll be what potential does the incentive buyout have? Those types of questions, okay? We'll reserve for Thursday night.
President Clemens, I think we need a little bit better than miscellaneous. I think if board members have something that they're holding back or waiting to deal with, that it comes forward, that you can get it on an agenda, or we have an idea where it's going to come from.
Well, right now, Donna, I just said as we moved on, I focused with what he had. Now, I wanted, to bring forward the changes that have come along with Middle New York, is about the football insurance, is about whether or not what the board's interest is now that we've taken on so many new curricular items, which was to bring more students, more opportunity.
Okay, but I think all those things need to be written down, given to Dr. Bose
Or call
to the right
Dr.
cabinet
Bond or
members so
any of
that
the
there's no
administrators
surprises.
here.
Well, who said none? But I said there's still odd
I understand your point, Ms. Mangle.
You can't think of
But
everything.
I'm sure some miscellaneous questions will come up and we'll address them. But we keep in mind, we're coming to close. We will close this out on Tuesday night. We will come to consensus on Tuesday night as to what kind of millage increase this board can live with. So we're down to 2 more nights after tonight. Okay. This concludes the part for board members' questions. Now I'll open up to the audience of citizens. Ma'am? You need to come and you need to state your name and your address. And I'll remind the audience to limit your questions and comments to 3 minutes.
My name is Stephanie Hendry, and I'm from Montgomeryville. I have a son in Bridle Path. And I have to say, he's in 1st grade, and I'm very new to all this. My son 3 weeks ago had to go into reading recovery. He was in school, and he wasn't quite doing what he should have been doing as far as reading. Teacher went to his kindergarten class to find out if there was a problem there. There was none. Turns out that he has problems with his sight words. He was very disappointed when he came home. He was like, Mom, I don't want to go back to school because I can't read. Everybody reads, but I can't. He went to reading recovery. He's been in there 3 weeks. He can't wait to read a book to me. He is so overjoyed. He can't wait to go back to school. He loves his reading. So you take this program away, you can put 20 children in a class. You want to put more children in this class with one teacher. Well, that's the same thing as you have a child in a schoolroom or a classroom now. But that 20 children will probably have to go to that reading recovery for what, 2 or 3 years? Whereas you have this one child, one-on-one, being in there for what, 8, 10 weeks and coming out of it. So I think what we really need to do is have our children have that one-on-one, not just pushed along with the group, because we're individuals. We don't all learn the same way. We don't all think the same way. And some of us need that one-on-one. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Mary Ann?
Mary Ann Stewart, Upper Gwinnett. I think, Mrs. Scherer, the reason you and I do not understand every nuance of this program is that, and I'm really not sure of your educational background, that you have not gotten a master's or a PhD in education. That is why I trust Dr. Tarozzi to make that decision. I think your realm of responsibility is to determine the cost and whether you feel it is an efficient way of spending for that number of children. You have every right to ask that question. But to sit there and ask her to evaluate or give you the criteria for how a child gets into this program so that you can in turn evaluate whether it would have benefited your children when they were in first grade, which is what I understood you asked for, is a waste of her time. And I understand she seems busy enough with the task at hand. But I am becoming very frustrated with this group asking for a complete understanding of an educational program. We have administrators up here that I'm sure you have in your budget. You know how well we can pay them, and they deserve every penny of it, who are there to make those decisions for me as a parent and my child's education. I trust them. I feel you are overstepping your bounds here in asking for every minute detail of the program. We will not understand it. Whether you feel it is beneficial to 89 children, it will be a decision you will make. But to sit here and want every ounce and every understanding, a complete understanding of that program is inappropriate. No response is necessary.
Excuse me.
I think she's entitled.
There's a misunderstanding exactly. I asked for what what Carol offered was already existing, not for her to compile anything. She herself volunteered that there was a list of indicators which were used as the guidelines. Wasn't whether or not it was beneficial to my children, but I think that if there are clear indicators that show what first graders, how you can target, how you can pick out a six-year-old's reading handicaps before they've been through a full formal reading year, is interesting to me. Secondly, if I hadn't gone to see teaming, or if I hadn't gone to see other educational programs, some of the very same people would come forward and they would criticize me for making no effort to gain any understanding regarding how the program works and how it functions. So, you know, while you can twist and turn exactly what my intent was, it was clearly offered out there as something that's there, that is used as a measurement. And as I weigh costs, I have to weigh educational value. And it's not a matter of dollars or cents per se. It's a matter of priorities in education and efficiency and effectiveness. All of that makes a difference. And I just feel I can't believe that someone that has been so intent on us becoming more knowledgeable in what we do, and certainly weighing educational values. Takes an input from many different
Understand. In all
people.
fairness, I allowed you to respond. Normally, we don't individually respond, but it was directed towards you, Mrs. Scherer, and glad you responded. Sir?
Hi, my name is Jim McDonald, and I'm Town Ensign.
And I've had 2 boys come up through the school district, and from kindergarten right on through high school. One's graduated now and has got a very good education in engineering at college. The other's a junior in high school and going to graduate next year. I'd like to address the issue of reading recovery, and I just would like to point out 2 things. I understand the board's issues about looking at some of the dollars and wanting to get the dollars as far as, the time spent and what it's done. But I really appreciate Mrs. Clark's comments about the preventive maintenance part of it as far as long-term effects on the school district. And I think that Mr. Kelly, in preparing his budget, just like I would prepare a budget where I work or whatever it might be on a P&L statement or whatever, when you're looking at what the cost of a program are, you should also look at and get the information from Carol or from Judy or whoever it might be on the long-term savings that you would have on this program. So you can really look at a balanced approach here, not only what the costs are, but also what the savings are. So let's not, I heard you talking about, the cost of the salaries, the cost of the supplies, the cost of this, but then let's not forget the other side of the equation so that you can balance this budget and take a look at the long-term effects and whether the percentages are going up or down. So I think that should be part of your, even if it's a best guess as to, okay, a certain percentage of these students might be misrepresented and might go into special education, but what is the cost of X number of students in special education? And at least you can have some numbers, and then you can start the tracking process over a period of years. And having a program that's in place for only 2 years, it's going to take you at least, 4 or 5 years to get a preventative program like this going over a period of time. So that's my first comment that I'd like to make. My other comment that I'd like to make is, I'd like to ask all of the board members, and it's interesting, Ms. Scherer, that you said that you were at a couple of these team meetings and you've seen some of these meetings. I'd like to ask all of the board members, have any of you been to an actual in-class reading recovery session in our schools? And I'd like to make that has anyone been there? Not one of you?
They're basically private.
I'm very private.
They're confident, it's one-on-one tutoring. It's not like an open public classroom.
I think, let me just I think, I could direct to Carol. Is there anything private? I mean, if a school board member would like to.
Confidential.
Sir, I can, school board members are entitled to go observe. I've talked to Superintendent Bose about it, yes. And to answer your question, yes, we could go observe if we wanted to.
Okay, so that, what I would like,
Point of clarification, Mr. Clemens, because I asked specifically if I could attend a reading recovery session at the elementary school where my child goes to, and I was told because of the number of children in there, it would be most intimidating for me as an adult to come into the room and that the children would be distracted and would probably be better not if I didn't.
Well,
so there is a miscommunication.
There is a room designed to provide the instruction for teachers and for observers where your presence is not noted. It uses a two-way mirror, a speaker system, and that's a bridle path. And the board members are encouraged and certainly are entitled, and it would be very healthy given the delicate topic that's before us, concern over cost and concern over helping children at the earliest possible age recover from a reading deficit that you do. Tom Clemens has indicated to me he intends to take a long lunch hour someday in the near future and make that visit himself. Other board members certainly could do that, and I would be glad to assist you in making the arrangements. I'm sorry that you were misled about the opportunity to visit, but I think given the fact that there's one location that is designed for this very purpose, you're welcome to take the opportunity.
Dr. Rose, I'm requesting that you set that up for me Thursday morning.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Of this week?
Of this week.
Okay, we can do that.
I applaud the prompt response by the board to go take a look at the program, and I would encourage the other board members to really take a look at this program. I happened to go up to New York University and actually listen to the woman who started this program. Happened to go up to a seminar up there and listen to this woman talk for 3 hours on this particular program, and if you could hear her give example after, just case study after case study on the success of how the early intervention of this particular program.
Sir, I need to ask you to conclude your remarks. Your 3 minutes is up.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had a 3-minute limit, but that's fine. I would just to say that I'd encourage you, and those were the 2 points I made as far as adding the cost, looking at the other side of the cost, and encouraging the board to attend those sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Ma'am?
I'm Sandra Schmitz from Montgomery Township, and I had a question concerning the Merck Institute for Science Education. I'm looking at the equipment request summary for the high school, and in science, I don't see equipment here to build a new lab for our high school. I'm wondering if any of the funds that come from the Merck Institute would be available for something like this. And the reason I'm wondering is because I go to the high school and I see science teachers on carts, like art teachers, going back and forth. They can't stay in the lab, which would limit them as to the length of the experiments that they can do with the kids. They can't leave their stuff out to be continued the next time the lab meets. Things like this. It just seems like we don't have enough lab space.
The Merck project ends at the middle school.
So we can't use any of it
We
for high
can't
school
use the
at all.
Merck funds outside of the elementary schools and the middle school. Now, Merck has talked about a high school component, but at this stage, it's only talk.
Should have hope, though. We are talking about a renovation project, Dr.
Well,
Bose, to
certainly.
deal with the high school problem.
You're right,
Yeah.
Mrs.
They may
Sherrill.
not-
I answered a question directly about Merck.
Right, about Merck.
Right.
We
Well, I
certainly
realize that. I
intend
was just
in the
looking
high
at-
school project to address that issue with new construction.
Just thought this might be faster.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it's not available to us.
Any other questions or comments?
It's not that much faster.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's not that much faster.
Let's see, we didn't have any executive sessions. Is there movement to adjourn?
Yeah, moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Stilling, second by Mrs. Sherrill. All those in favor say aye.
Did you say,
Aye.
did you say there is an